Hello, hello, hello. Here we are, a week again.
Hello.
An hour difference this time. Time zones.
Yes.
These are fun.
An hour difference and about half a meter shorter.
You shrunk. So, welcome everyone. I hope everyone's had a good week. We've got some interesting guests today. We're going to go through some of our rules first, and just to make sure everyone's aware, and then we'll get on with the show. So, without further ado, we have the company on today, also called @sign, and we'll be talking to them in a little bit. First of all, we're going to introduce ourselves. My name is Simon Lightfoot. I'm a Flutter community leader. I also work as CTO at DevAngels London. We're a small developer agency, and you can follow me on Twitter @DevAngelsLondon. Scott.
And I am Scott Stahl. I am a community leader and organizer of GDG Cleveland. I have been helping build the Flutter community for about 3.5 years now.
That long. Widget's not with us today at the moment, but he might be joining us later. And in general, we'll have lots of community members on. Hopefully, we'll have a few more people on later on for Q&A. Scott, the do's and don'ts.
Let's see here. Be excellent to each other. Now that we're going to get sued.
Excellent, dude.
Look, be decent, okay? At the very least, treat people the same way you would when you meet a stranger on the street. If you can't do that, then, maybe you need some mental health help. But be nice, be respectful, be constructive, okay? I know on YouTube comments that can be tough, but I have faith in you. You can do it. Don't post anything that's adult, rude, offensive. Don't advertise and spam about yourself. Don't spam your same question over and over and over again. Believe me, we see it the first time. If we see it the 10th time, we're probably just going to ignore it. And harassment of any kind is not tolerated. And if you violate that one, not only will you be blocked from this chat, you'll probably also be tossed from the Flutter community Slack and maybe the Discord and a few other places, because we all know each other. That's kind of the cool thing that we can do.
So,
but
you know what? I've had such a busy week. I haven't been keeping up to date with the most recent changes, so I think we might have to be quite light on news today.
Well, you have a little.
Go for it. I mean, if you've got anything, please tell us.
Well, there is one particular article that is really it really caught my eye when it came out, and that is one by Greg Perry. It's an in-depth look at the text style widget.
Yes, I really like that one.
And this is really, really good. Greg does a lot of great work on Medium, and he goes through showing you all kinds of things. Inheriting style, the front and back.
Are you sharing your screen here? Because we.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I told StreamYard to share the screen, but it had not come up yet because Simon's controlling that.
Go for it. My bad. Technical difficulties.
There we go. Now, decoding the text style. And I'm sorry about that noise. I have a dog walking by. But you can inherit. You can change the color front and back. You can change the color of the text. Opacity. How many of you have played with text opacity? Come on. There's size. Spacing, word spacing, text baseline, height.
It's nice that he goes through it all with lots of images and pictures to show off what exactly it's all about and how to do it all.
Yep. The only thing that I do want to point out here, there's so much I'm still going down, and that there's this much to cover. But the only thing I do want to point out here is that text scale. When you set a text scale specifically, you have to remember that the user's accessibility settings that are changing the text size for them will get disrupted. They will be completely ignored if you do that.
there was another issue around that. Now, this may not apply anymore. I haven't checked the latest bug issue, but I will mention this right now since you mentioned text scale factor. And there's an issue where if you're making text spans and your text style overrides the text scale factor, it's a compounding issue. In other words, it scales. It doesn't just apply the scale to that, but then if you put the scale in the next one down, it essentially goes from, let's say you do 1.2 in both, you're 120%, then 120% of the 120%, and so on and so on, right? So
it's applying text scale factor to the rich text, not to the individual span.
It's to it's applying it to each individual span, but of course, because you can have spans that surround other spans.
Oh,
right. So if
you're talking about spans that surround other spans, not spans.
So basically, nested spans, right? And the nested spans scale factor is not scale factor should be applied as a one unit, not as a compounding unit. And that was a known issue, and I don't know if it's been resolved yet. It's very edge case. I mean, not everyone actually would come up with that problem, and there's ways around it anyway. So
nested spans could become very confusing. Just like if you start nesting 3, 4, 5 different maps, how do you get the value from the bottom map?
So let's should we introduce some of our guests?
Let's see here. Our guests from @sign, we have Colin. Somewhere.
Colin, welcome.
There we go.
Hey, folks.
We have Anthony. There we go.
And I think Kevin's going to be with us in a bit.
All right.
I think Anthony, I kind of wanted to ask, can you explain a bit more about what is the @company and what does it do?
Of course. Yeah. So if you're in the Flutter community and you're building apps with Flutter and Dart today, the way you go about doing it is a typical model of designing your app, architecting your app, going ahead, setting your database, login, authentication, the whole 9 yards, if you will. When our founders, Colin and Kevin, who will be here shortly, looked at that, they looked at it saying, when these apps are built today, we collect a lot of data from the users today. And the users, at the end of the day, don't have control over the data that they are giving away to these apps, and which are centrally stored. And they wanted to look at this and say, how do we give control back to the user? Or we don't call users in the company, we call them as people. How do we give control back to the people so that they know what they're doing with their data? If they feel they don't trust someone who is accessing their data today, how can they pull it back easily? And that's the base premise of how the @protocol was formed, right, or conceived. And this has been in the works, I would say, probably 15 plus years in the heads of Kevin and Colin. Once the technology was right, once they figured that, hey, Dart was the way to go build this, the @protocol was formed last year. And not just that, you'll hear from us shortly as to how simple it'll make the lives of Flutter developers by eliminating a lot of the layers I spoke about. And in addition to what Flutter offers as developer velocity, you probably save an additional 30-40% building on our open source technology, which is, again, built on Dart. So probably a longer answer than you expected, Simon, but that's the crux of what we do in the @protocol.
No, it's kind of interesting because I've had this feeling for a while that like we talk about privacy and we talk about these security problems around companies having data leaks and all of this kind of stuff, and the nature of you don't own your data, right? When you sign those privacy policies, you're essentially saying, I give up my use of all my data to that company. They can do whatever they want with my data, right? But you have in the EU, at least with GDPR, you kind of get that nice thing where you can say, I don't need to do certain things like advertising companies. There's a few things around that, but there's also that kind of aspect of anonymization of your data. So after you can say, delete my account, and when you delete my account, you essentially have to make it anonymous. This is how I understand it. I'm not a lawyer. Other things may apply, whatever it is. But the point being is that when you delete that account, of course, then they can anonymize your data. They still have them, maybe statistics about it, but they have no idea who made those statistics. So therefore, you become just a number and no identifiable information. And this is quite important for around privacy and security. I think there's. I mean, I want to hear more about this, and I'll let you guys take over the screen in a minute. But I do. I had loading spinners. Don't know what happened there. Carry on.
Okay, Simon doesn't think he's here, but he is still here. So
let's hang on. I think that we have Kevin here. Kevin, hey, there he is. You muted, Kevin, just to let you know beforehand.
I'm good.
I'm actually kind of curious. I noticed you guys have got @Kevin, @Colin, @Anthony. Are they your @signs?
These are our @signs. Yeah, they're not Twitter handles. They're @signs.
Not Twitter handles this time. Okay. So let's.
Simon's in charge of the bad humor. I'll get the good stuff later.
Oh, thank you. Right, I'll leave the screen to you guys. Anthony, do you want to stick around?
Yeah, he's got to stick around. He's got the charts.
All right. The screen is all yours, guys.
Awesome. Hey, Kevin, welcome. You can hear us?
Yeah, sure. No problem. I'm good.
Okay. First of all, I want to start with thanking Simon, Majid, Scott, and the entire Flutter community leadership for having us here. It's a pleasure for us to be here, and we're excited showcasing what we've been up to. I know a lot of us have been we've been talking to a number of Flutter communities around the world the last few months or so, and so you probably already know us. But for those of you who do not know us, we'll do a quick intro before we get started with what the AT protocol is all about. Kevin, you want to start?
Oh, hi. I'm Kevin Nichols. I'm the Chief Product Officer.
Sorry, I'm going to cut in here just for a second. I think we have some technical difficulties. The screen share is not functioning. Can I ask Anthony? Can you stop sharing and try and reshare?
Okay.
And we'll just see what happens.
Stop and share again.
Hopefully, technical difficulties will be resolved. Let's see.
Yay, I see it.
I see it on StreamYard. To make sure we see it on the live stream. There's a bit of a delay here.
Yeah.
There we go. We see it on live stream. Thanks, guys. I'll leave you to it. Sorry to interrupt.
Thanks, Simon.
All right, Kevin, go ahead.
I'm Kevin. I'm the Chief Product Officer at the ad company. And as Anthony said, this is something I've been working on for a long, long time. As has Colin, I'll hand over to Colin. You can give the emergent story. Sure. Hey, everyone. I'm really glad to be here. Notionally, I'm the CTO, but I'm really the chief troublemaker. Make trouble for lots of people. So yeah, Kevin and I were talking together over a cup of coffee in Silicon Valley, I don't know, 7 years ago. And we were lamenting the way the internet was running and the fact that identity on the internet was really, really messy. I got fed up logging into lots of things and giving away data and having to replicate stuff. And every time I saw a web form, it drove me a little bit mad. And Kevin, being Kevin, said, we should do something about it. So we started thinking about what we should do about it. And the big question back then was, instead of like grabbing all this data and put it in one sort of bucket, which is what many other people have been trying to do for many years, and it never works, what's the simplest thing we could do to solve this problem? What's the simplest way to assert an identity on the internet? And the answer is just a simple string. And then it's down to the individual owner of that string. So, my @sign's @Colin. It's down to me to decide what data is behind that and who I want to give access to that data. So that's where we started. 6 years ago, we tried to make that happen with taking the open source code of DNS and welding it together with blockchain code. And although it works, it was never going to scale. And I think we're already seeing some people actually now trying to do that. And I can tell you, that's just not going to work. We tried, we failed. 2 years ago, we thought we'd have a relook at the problem, and we thought the technology is actually there. There's two big bits of technology that were sort of game changers. In-memory databases that could scale up to 50 billion. It's a pretty big game changer. That was not available when we started looking at this. We had to use something distributed like DNS. But we can actually centralize that now. And the other thing that's really changed is mobile devices are strong enough now to create their own cryptographic keys, which means you can create your own keys on your own mobile device and never give the private key to anybody else. So only you can see the data that's sent to you, and you can send data to somebody else, and only they can see it. So anybody in the middle can't see the data, which is a really huge game changer. So we took those two things and made some decisions, and a company appeared.
Awesome. Thanks, Colin. Of course, we're going to hear more about the company. We're going to look under the hood a little bit, talk to you about what we've been up to, the apps that are in the works, apps that we are excited to share with the world very soon. So before that, quick introduction about me. Like the slide says, I mean, I'm all over the place in the company, but for you, my role is, I lead the developer partnerships with the Flutter community. It's been just tremendous fun working with all of you over the last 6+ months, and I've never seen anything like this in my 20 years of doing technology. So the Flutter community is just so awesome, and so glad that we are a part of this. So I'll set the context for Kevin and Colin to just tell you or build on what Colin already said. And then we'll look at the company itself. So if you look at the internet today, as Colin mentioned, all of us people are just users, right? I mean, whichever website we go to, wherever we transact, whether it's our banks, whether it's our travel and hospitality websites, we have to give our data over and over again on all these different forms, our credit card information, our passwords, and beneath those websites, there are so many trackers, right? I mean, yes, the cookies are going away, but still, there's still so many ways in which all of us are being surveilled today in ways that we can't even imagine. I mean, everybody knows every move that we make on the internet. And then more than that, I mean, once we give away that data to all these different entities, that data that is our data does not belong to us anymore. It is somebody else's data, right? So why is the internet designed this way? Like Kevin and Colin already mentioned, I mean, we wanted to change that. I mean, their cup of coffee is never good news for anybody because they're always looking to change something, right? So when Kevin and Colin are discussed this problem, they said, okay, why don't we try to fix this for the current generation as well as for the future generation? And that's how the ad company was born. So what is their solution to that? Colin alluded to this a little bit already. So if you look at the way we enter data today, like I mentioned on the previous slide, it's all forms. I mean, you got to give so much of data about yourself. And how can you simplify it? And after a lot of research and thought, their answer was, it is just a simple string, right? If somebody says, hey, what's your phone number? You don't have to give away your specific phone number. What's your email address? You don't have to give away your specific email address. All of that data that belongs to us as people can reside under a simple string on the internet. And that is what we call as an @ sign, right? So the @ sign, to simply put, is your key or your entry into the @ protocol, or at the @ world, as we'd like to call it, where your data belongs to you. You can give data to whom you trust, and you can pull back that data if you don't trust someone tomorrow. Or if you want to give temporary access, you can do that all through an @ sign. And today, if you say, who are you, right? I mean, I might say my name is Anthony Prakash, but we see a day that'll come when somebody asks me who I am. I'll say I am @ Anthony, because everything under Anthony tells whoever I want to give access to, I can manage it through @Anthony, right? So that's the vision of the @sign and the protocol. I'm going to turn it over to Colin and Kevin again to just give you a little bit more history on why they went the protocol route, why did they choose to open source it, all of that background. Very, very fascinating. Colin, back to you.
So why a protocol? That's a pretty good question. We've seen many companies in Silicon Valley and around the world try and broach this problem from the application level. Most famously, and many people on the call might not remember this, but most famously in my mind would be Microsoft when they brought out Microsoft Passport. It was a crashing failure. There's been other crashing failures in this space because of two reasons. Number one, they try and lump lots and lots of data, and it's not down to you as to what data you want to have in that wallet or passport or whatever they want to call it. That's definitely a problem because they're sort of telling you what you've got to keep in your wallet to prove your identity. That's just not important, I don't think. And the other really big thing is that all of those attempts have really been done very much at the application level. Blockchain is a sort of an interesting mix of application. You have an application which is a wallet, and you have the underlying protocol. That's probably the closest to what we've seen. It's outrageously complicated because it's complicated. People don't trust it. So we had to take a juxtapose from that, but really start at the network layer and actually write a protocol. So we think why things have failed at the application layer are because it's not open, nobody else can play, somebody wants to control it. So that forced us to go down the stack to a protocol level and actually write a open source protocol. It would have been great if we could have used a protocol that was already existing, but we tried that 7 years ago. Didn't work. So we had to be brave and maybe a little foolhardy and think that we could actually write a brand new protocol. But that's what we did. Actually, the next decision you got to make is if you're going to write a protocol, what language are you going to write the protocol in it? And yeah, I'm an old guy. And whenever I've written protocols in the past, I've been involved in protocols, you always write them in C. The main reason for that is portability. The downside of writing in C is it takes a lot of effort. And this probably would have been a 4 or 5 or 6 year effort if we'd written everything in C. But a friend of mine, Richard, who actually is a pretty big player in the New York Dart and Flutter scene, he was working on a startup at the time, and he said to me, "Oh, you should use Dart." I'm like, "Okay, I know nothing about Dart, but okay, I should use Dart." And he goes, "Oh, this Flutter thing that's going to be huge." I'm like, "I trust you, Richard. You know what you're talking about. We'll start writing it in Dart." And the promise back then, and this is only 2.5 years ago, the promise back then was we could write a single code base and not only be able to run the binaries on x86 and ARM and ARM64, although that wasn't available right then, there was a promise. It also meant that we could then reuse that code and reuse those binaries across anything from a light bulb to a big server in a data center. Hugely attractive when you wanted to get a protocol out the door and be able to reuse that code in a expandable and extensible way. So we laid a pretty big bet. We sort of bet the company on Dart, and it turned out to be an incredibly good bet. Everything, in fact, you can see all our code. You can go to our GitHub and see our code. It's the whole stack, including the database that we use HiveDB. I don't know if anybody else has used HiveDB behind the scenes. Again, everything's pure Dart, and that's been a really good bet. And as we've started rolling out applications, we've been able to expose those protocols through Dart into Flutter. So yeah, That was the decision, the rationale. We did turn a whole bunch of. I mean, it's not just me and Kevin developing anymore. There's a whole team of people developing, and many of them said, "No, we want to write this in Java." And now they've got the Dart bug. It's quite amusing to see former Java developers working everything on Dart and just thinking Dart rather than Java now. So that's pretty cool. What I miss, Kevin?
Oh, nothing. I guess the story. So the proof point. Colin and I were working at this huge insurance company that they were moving to the cloud, and there's kind of a proof point why a protocol. They had so the problem is with application layer access control stuff is that somebody with a sysadmin rights and the data access to the data can see everything, and they had deployed all this stuff, all their data onto a cloud data lake, and it was exposed to the whole world. It was right out in the open. And Colin pointed that out to them, and they're like, "No way! We have all this access control stuff. It's all super secure. It's safe. It's great." And they just would not believe that their data was exposed to the world, until Colin showed them, and all the top level stuff, which they spent a fortune on and a ton of time and people implementing, didn't actually really protect much at all. So we just said what we need is something that's end-to-end encrypted at the protocol level, so that as you go up the stack, essentially the data is inherently secure and not reliant upon a bunch of people following the rules, which is what they relied on. As long as everybody played by the rules, it was fine, until you get into it and hack into it and get access to the database, and you get everything. So I always think back to that story because it was funny. They just would not believe it. It's like, it's right there.
Yeah. Sysadmin should not be able to see the data. I mean, that's the underlying principle. So we run some of the infrastructure behind all this protocol. We cannot see the data. It's encrypted on the endpoints with keys we have not got access to. So that's pretty important. Thanks, Anthony. Do you want to talk to this, Kev?
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, so fundamentally, the best way to think about this is if you wanted to write an app like Signal or another, P2P end-to-end encrypted app, you could do it. It's hard. You have to do a lot of work. And if you compare that to, mentioned kind of the consolidated or the centralized data in the cloud, where somebody will have access to it. Even if it's encrypted, somebody running the infrastructure will have the access to the keys, and like most operations, that's not as well controlled as you would think it is. So what we do is, so this framework is intended to make it really easy for people to build end-to-end encrypted apps, and make it basically a tool set and a framework for doing that. So the data is actually literally peer-to-peer. And or person to person at least, and and end-to-end encrypted, so that only the only people who can read it are the people you're sharing it with, and the only people and vice versa. So it's not accessible to anybody else in the middle, or if they get into the data, they still can't see it, or they won't be able to decrypt it and take a look at it, which gives rise to a couple of interesting things, because each piece of each data exchange is a grant of a cryptographic right. Then you could do polymorphic behavior, so you can actually give a different answer to the same question, which is part of the protocol. The protocol has a syntax and semantic to it, so you can ask the same question like phone at Colin, and and give a different answer depending upon who's asking. And one of the coolest things about the protocol is every time somebody's asking for data, you know precisely who they are, for sure, and that's unique in the world today. So that there's a couple of things we're trying to do is make this ridiculously simple. But one of them is that who's asking. It's end-to-end encrypted, and you can give a different answer depending upon who's asking. So that's kind of cool.
Awesome. All right, we'll get into just telling the world about the protocol itself.
So I don't think most people want to write protocols. And I do, because I'm a network protocol junkie, and I'm like playing down at the Dart level and seeing what's going on the wire. But I don't think most people want to do that, and that's just fine. But if you do want to do it, then please come look at our open source, and please contribute. If you see holes, then please let us know, and if you see improvements, let us know. But just writing a protocol was not clearly enough. If we were going to help developers write really cool new apps and bring the world new experiences, we had to do more. So we created a platform around the protocol. Obviously, it's all open source, and obviously all that code is in GitHub and PubDev and all that good stuff. But what we wanted to do was make sure that you, as a developer, didn't have the pain of having to build a backend. So imagine building a Flutter app and not having to have a Firebase database or a database at all. You actually use the platform to be your database end to end. That's essentially what we built. And because it's end-to-end encrypted, there's no opportunity for any third party to surveil or see what's happening on the apps. That has to be explicitly granted. So what's interesting there is surveillance free for sure, but we are speaking to some pretty big brands at the moment, and they realize that surveilling is damaging their brand. So it's a simple concept, but they haven't really figured out how to do it. Because they haven't figured out how the way to do it, they surveil. So it's just a mechanism for large brands to just ask, right? Just ask politely. A bit like the beginning of this session here. Wouldn't it be nice if brands treated you with respect and weren't rude to you? And I think that's a causality of what we've done is. Because there is a mechanism to ask, and there's consequences if they don't behave nicely, like you don't give them your data anymore. I think that just ends up with a much nicer place. And obviously what we've done further to that is, and you'll see in the next chart how we've done it, layered everything. So if you do want to go down to the protocol level, all those libraries are open to you, all those methods are open to you. And if you just don't want to do any of that stuff, then there's some really high-level abstractions that make it just look like a simple key-value pair database, but on a global scale. So yeah, that's what we've been up to, wrapping the protocol around with a platform, so you don't actually have to know how the protocol itself actually works. Kevin, you can probably take us through the next slide and show folks how we did that, I guess.
Yeah, so one thing I would say is that, everything we do is open source. Literally what's in the repos, what we are running in production, there's no difference at all. We actually have a BuddyWorks pipeline that builds from there. Yeah. So you can operate at any level you want. So there's the protocol is a spec. You can implement whatever you want, however you want to. If you want to be spec compliant, you can use our code as reference. You can build whatever you want. You don't have to use anything that we're doing as is. You're free to take it and do, come up with other ideas and implement. There's a lot of use cases for this that we've kind of thought of. There's a whole lot more that we haven't even dreamed of that somebody else will. So those are all, that's part of being as open as we are. We actually have even open source some of the sample apps, or the actually production apps, but apps that we're putting into the stores. We're open sourcing the apps as well, so people can see how we do it. Okay, so what we've done, and you're free to use this or not, up to you. So there's on the kind of start from the top down. So on the far right, upper right corner, we have a bunch of Flutter widgets, and those are doing things that are make it easy to implement something in an app. So we have contacts, and that means, so I guess I have to pop-up level. So there's kind of a couple things that are really different about how you build applications with the app protocol. So it's basically, the first thing is to think of all your data in one, managed under one database or one key value pair store. So it's kind of like a big table model for all of your data, which means that the apps can reason, all your apps can reason over all your data that on your phone, and that's a secure model. So you could say, I want to be able to use my contact information across all my apps. And there's one of the things in addition to contacts, but be able to manage groups is something that nobody's ever quite got right, how to manage groups. So there's contacts and groups and events, which means like calendaring or time-based events, and things like chat and location sharing. So those are all Flutter widgets. So you can actually, if you wanted to add a chat feature to your app, you could do it in one line of code and add that into your app, and you'll have Flutter widgets now for doing chat. And then correspondingly, there's Dart libraries. If you don't want to use the Flutter widgets and want to do something else, you can leverage the data model using the Dart libraries. And then those are all using streams, or sorry, services that are part of our SDK. So there's a client SDK, and then it says at client mobile. We're going to change that to at client Flutter. So the Flutter SDK, and then there's the services that are available to you are things like onboarding, which is how do you pair up your @sign with them and get the keys set up and stored in a keychain so that you've got them available to yourself and backed up in case you lose your phone or have a problem. And then there's the persistence, which is currently we're using HiveDB. There also manages caching, and that caching means that data that other people are sharing with you. So we'll show you an example of that here in a second. All of that is synchronized to a cloud microservice. So in case you're offline or have multiple devices, you can synchronize data across all your devices. Also, we manage all the end-to-end encryption and notifications. It's not so much push notifications, but it's data notifications. For us are data events. So if there's a data change or something added, then you can get a notification in a peer-to-peer manner. And then we also support streaming sockets or streaming data streaming as well. So if you want to do some big files or videos or audio and all that kind of stuff, you can do that with streams. Those are all the services that are available, and then that communicates over a very secure channel with TCP/IP plus TLS plus the app protocol. And Colin will tell you what that means. And then that talks to these production cloud environments, which are what we call secondary servers, which are microservices in the cloud that are. And there's the single centralized point is the root server, which will tell you, if you want to say phone at Colin, it'll tell you where to go to get permission to see phone at Colin. And that's the root server provides that centralized directory of secondaries. And then, of course, the infrastructure, all the typical DevOps stuff that you would need to do to run it. That exact same environment can be run locally in a local dev environment, or if you want to run it in your own cloud, you can run it in your own cloud. You can do really whatever you want. What I miss, Colin?
Nothing. If you go to @dev, you can just download the Docker compose file and fire up the local environment. We call it the virtual environment. All of our devs use that. And yet again, it's all teed off of the open source code. So as we change open source code, the pipelines kick in and create a new version of that. So you're always in sync with what's in production, which I know it's always been a bugbear of mine with other platforms. So we tried very hard to make sure the open source code is what's in production and is what is in the test environments. The only thing that's missing at the moment that's on this chart, we haven't got the cloud developer environment up and running on that. I'm actually writing code for that as we speak, but the local development environment is. And very soon we'll be opening up the registrar site so you can run your own infrastructure yourself. So at the moment, all the infrastructure, all these secondaries, which are basically microservices that mirror your phone. Obviously, all the data is encrypted on there, so you kind of see anything on there. But if you want to run your own infrastructure, then we're just adding that functionality to the registrar website, so you can do that. So a bit like running your own web server, you can get somebody else to run a web server, but sometimes it's nice to run your own. You can run your own app protocol server, and we'll be allowing you to do that very, very soon. So yeah, that's the only thing that's I guess we missed. But, yeah.
Yeah, I would just add, Kevin and Colin, that because of this foundation that we offer, we've seen developers come up with apps, let's say in a day to 3 days.
Yep.
That's the power of all of these ready-made widgets and libraries out there. So do check it out, like Colin said, on GitHub, and let us know how we can improve them.
Yeah, the other thing I will mention is, although we've written a new protocol, it's a brand new protocol. It has nothing to do with blockchain. We get compared with blockchain a lot because we're using crypto, but we're not a completely decentralized system. We actually have used a methodology of distribute what we can, centralize what we must. So we've distributed literally as much as we can. We've distributed. The only thing that's centralized is that root server, and that's really just so it's a global directory that everybody can trust. So yeah, so that we're not. This is when you see the code, you'll see it's nothing to do with blockchain, although we use a hell of a lot of crypto. And we've tried to keep the protocol as simple as possible so you guys can understand it. And yeah, we would welcome external audits on it. We've had many people looking over it from scary 3-letter organizations and the rest of it. But I know that's one of the reasons why we've open sourced it. So people do see problems and bring it to attention, and we'll work on it together.
The last thing I would just throw out, so our initial release was 4 months ago.
Yeah.
So it's still very much brand new, work in progress, lots to do. Love to have people contributing, coming up with ideas, adding widgets. So we're really trying to build a community around this.
Awesome.
Okay, so this is there's a brain bender here. So so applications with the app protocol are really different. So this is an example of two people in a chat session with each other. So on the left is Bob, and the right is Alice. And Bob sends a message to Alice, or actually doesn't send anything. He just says, "Hey, I have a message for you." And then Alice can go say, "Great, I'm going to pick up that message," and caches, and Alice caches that message on her phone. So it's available offline and all that kind of stuff. So we manage all the caching and all that stuff, and it's encrypted. So the only person in the universe that can read that message is Alice, because Alice has the keys, and the keys are on her phone. And likewise, when she responds, it goes in the opposite direction. So applications are a combination now of data that I've created and data that I'm shared with other people, and then the information that they have created and shared back with me, and then the chat widget or app is kind of a lens on the data that says I want to see all those chats in an organized presentation. So the cool thing is that if Alice says, "You know what, I don't like that Bob guy anymore, and I am going to delete all my messages that I shared with Bob," then they will actually disappear from Bob's phone. So part of the protocol is there's a lot of controls and timers that are built into the protocol for time to live, cascade delete, time to refresh. There's a unique one called time till birth. So if you wanted to say, I'm going to release this financial information to 10,000 people, and I want them to all see it at the exact same millisecond, then I can set a timer that says it'll appear at that time. So it won't be available to anybody until a very specific point in time. So that's so that's the way the protocol works. It's a bit of a brain bender because everybody wants to say, I want to get have all the data in one place that I access, and so you have to think about it a little bit differently. So it's a combination. All the key structure is the same, so it's simple, but it's so simple that a lot of people don't believe it until they actually try it. So that's the way it works.
Yeah, it's not client server anymore. It's client server at the same time. So when you're writing the code, when we were writing the protocol code, it was very tricky because you have to remember that you're a client and a server at the same time. You have to deal with it. So yeah, it's a little tricky writing the protocol code. But those abstractions that we've written in the platform, hopefully that makes it easier. But if you look at it and you say, this could be better, then game on. We'd love to make it better.
Yep.
Indeed.
So these are some of the apps that developers have been working on. And why we call them hyper-connected is because, as Kevin said, if you've got data in one of these apps, that data is available in the other apps. We've abstracted away. Apps don't own data; you own the data. So if you put a contact in the Buzz app, then that contact will turn up in your file sharing app and your location app. So I think that's pretty novel, and it means you don't have to type stuff in again and again, which is good. And it means you're not welded to an app. If you put in data in one app, then you can use it in the other. That's why we call them hyper-connected. These apps, actually, some of them are actually live at the moment. The file sharing app personas app open, Atmosphere is open. Take a Vote, I think, is in test flight. Buzz is in test flight, and Arrive is in test flight. So they're all very much coming on the market very soon. And we've learned a lot. We've been working with developers to write these, and we've learned a lot along the way. So it's always interesting when you write a platform, how developers are actually going to use it. And 9 times out of 10, they don't use it the way you thought they were going to use it. So you have to learn from that. So it's been immense fun learning, seeing how people use what we've written, and then making it even better. So we just need more people using it so we can make it even better for everybody. What I miss, Kev?
Oh, so nothing at all. But I have to tell my favorite story. So it says multiple chat apps there. So we came across a couple of developers pretty much at the same time, and we have a whole incubator program that we're working with lots of developers to build apps, and two groups had the exact opposite idea, diametrically opposed idea, and using the chat widget or the chat libraries that we built with a completely different application overlay. So one of them was it's called Space Signal, and Space Signal allows you to chat with random people in the universe that you've never met before. And so so if you want to say, I want to meet new people, then you can start up a chat session with somebody you've never met before, and they get there's a whole randomization around that. And maybe a little bit of affinity mapping, but the idea is I meet somebody new from somewhere in the world and start a chat. And if it seems reasonable, great. If they turn out to be creepy, then you can delete your chat and block them, and your chats will disappear from the other person's phone. So you can feel safe actually chatting with somebody you've never met before. So that's interesting for a discovery standpoint. The other one is called Attached, and Attached is intimate chat between, say, you and your partner, or somebody you're in an intimate relationship with, and you want to feel safe that these chats cannot be monitored, mined, surveilled, spied upon, copied, and used for nefarious purposes against you. So how do you feel comfortable sharing completely intimate details with another person? And so the Attached app is designed to do that. So one is intimate person to person, And the other one is, I have no idea who I'm talking to, but I want to go meet new people. So very interesting to see those both kind of emerge at the same time in the incubator program. I was quite blown away by that.
Indeed.
I love it.
Awesome. So that's all we had for you. We did have a plan for a demo. I'm not sure if you're doing it right now or later, but
Hello.
Simon.
Hello, I'm back. Let's bring Scott back. Scott, do we have you? Hey, there we go. So that was actually really good, guys. I've been preparing the demo, hopefully, so we'll switch to that in a second. But I do want to say, like the concept of that, the new concept that this brings, that you own your data, it's great from a user perspective. But then I think that the problem that I guess we have as developers is that we need to get into a different mindset about how we use data. And I think that's kind of what I was feeling about that, is like you have to overcome that kind of notion that what's the best way of putting it? Like the data is just not in front of you. It's not in your database, right? You're essentially accessing the data, and it's just there, right? And then if it's not there, then you're dealing with that situation where they've revoked that access, for example, and so on.
Yeah, I think as we've been writing these apps and helping app developers come to terms with what that means, the focus has gone up the stack, which actually makes way more interesting apps. And the focus is not on the data anymore, but it's the experience the app brings. And after all, the most sticky apps, the most useful apps are ones that change experience. So that's what we've been trying to do, is that by all means the data is important, the interaction's important, the rest of it. But what's the experience you want to bring? What's the new experience you can bring now because of this? So yeah, I think experience engineering is probably not what we've done for a few years, and bringing that back is going to be super cool.
So if I can, I guess, get your attention for a second, everyone. I think we'll try and share my screen here and see what we can do. Aha! Actually, really make it bigger. Let's see if I can. Hang on, appearance, enter presentation mode. I think we'll give this a go.
Yeah, that's better.
Hang on. There's complications here. We have to take it out full screen, and then that should be. Hang on. I don't know what is the hots. Alt 1. I could do that. There we go.
Perfect.
Cool. So did I might not have been paying attention fully, but did you mention @login at all?
I didn't. No, we can run
to describe it. I can bring up a slide.
The chart would be great. Yeah, just the simple chart would be great.
The simple one. Do I have the simple one? I have the complicated. Oh no,
I have the complicated one if you like. That's fine.
I have the simple one. I can do that. Hang on.
I think it's the first slide on the deck.
Yep. I'll bring that across.
So obviously, everything's perfect when you're running the app protocol in a Flutter app on your phone, because it's all using the app protocol. Life's good. However, there's this legacy stuff called web. You may have heard of it. And I don't know about you, I use the web an awful lot, but lots of things really drive me a little bit crazy with it. And logins is one of my favorite pet peeves. But there's some convenience factors out there at the moment. And probably one of the biggest one is, I go to a new website that's offering some service, and it says, would you like to log in with Facebook, Twitter, GitHub, Google? And when I see that, and then there's a little box down there that says email, and email equals pain. All right. So I'm going to send an email, I'm going to do verification. So I'm going to take the easy option and press the Google button. And now I've just let Google know that I'm using this website, and magically other things are happening. So the idea behind, sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was going to say that's an interesting point, right? I didn't actually, you know what? Until you just mentioned that, I didn't really think about the Google kind of knowing, right? I mean, it's obvious. Don't get me wrong, and I know that's a factor, but not until you said that in this way, I just realized actually that's a good point, right? And this is the trick, right? You've got to think about privacy in your data in a different mindset, because we've all been trained kind of in a mindset, that you're open to give away all your data to these companies. I think that's
you don't actually have to. We don't believe you have to. So the idea of login is twofold. First of all, make the logging experience really easy. Well, that's good. And secondly, to make sure that nobody is snooping. So that's good. But my favorite use case is a little bit down the line, but we'll talk about that in a second. So, so we've got a web server on the right. We want to log into the web server. How does this work? Well, the web server essentially says, "What's your @ sign?" And I type in @Colin, and that's fine. And then the web server then gives me a challenge, and the challenge is in the form of a very large number. And the challenge basically says, if you really are @Colin, you've got to prove it. And the way you're going to prove that is scan the very large number in a QR code with your @login app on your phone, which Simon's going to show you. He's writing it for us. Take that very large number, sign it with your cryptographic keys, and then place that in a location on your ad server in the cloud that's signed, that the web server can pick up. And if it sees it and it's signed appropriately and it looks good, then I'll allow you to log in. And the only person that's snooping on that will be, well, nobody, because you own the data, you own the ad server, and that's you see lots of triangles, I guess, in our diagrams, because triangles seem to work in the app protocol.
I was going to say the other side of that coin is, because you've got QR code, they've also got an aspect of digital disconnect as well, which is another.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's how the base protocol works. The addition and this is the stretch goal for us, is the other thing that drives me crazy, other than snooping, is having to fill in damn web forms. Mm-hmm. So wouldn't it be great if the web server had an @ sign associated with it as well? And I permissioned that @ sign for the web. So let's imagine it's at BBC, and at BBC could then look at my preferences as I really like British comedy, and I feel lost without it living in the US.
I'm right. I'd just like to say that in that situation, you're when you log in, you're approving that you want at BBC to have access to a certain set of keys, right. Your preferences for their website. And at any point in the future, you can say, revoke those keys. I don't want BBC to access my preferences. Exactly. Or revoke that they know my gender, or whatever the individual thing is. You can
completely down to you, not anybody else. You don't have to update a form. You don't have to do anything. And then guess what? I mentioned experiences to Scott earlier. Then the BBC can give you a brand new experience that's highly tailored to you. And depending on how much data you want to share, you might be able to get a different experience.
What I'm wondering, though, hang on. What I'm wondering, if you give them permission to know certain things about you, how do you revoke it if they take that information and put it on their end?
Yeah, great question. So the way the app protocol works is you never actually give data away. You give access to data. So you never actually give the data to the web server. The web server can look it up in real time. And you can permission that web server to cache that data. And you can permission that data to evaporate after a certain amount of time. So that we call that time to live. Or you've got to refresh it at a certain amount of time. So we call that a TTR. Or as Kevin mentioned earlier, we also have another permission, which is time to birth, or TTB. So you've got this record, but it's not actually openable until a particular microsecond. So what that means is
I'm just trying to understand how BBC's software would work with that. So
in
other words, if we get Simon's phone number, what's to say BBC is going to honor that and not just make a copy of it in the database?
Exactly. So the interesting part of the world at the moment is that they actually don't want to cache the data. I used to run a large enterprise bank, and as soon as you cache the data, then you're into GDPR hell, because if somebody says to you, yeah, I don't want to be known by you anymore, and you've got to find every single backup tape that's got my telephone number on. There's no way a modern enterprise actually wants to hold on to that data. They literally want you to hold that data because it causes them so much pain and risk to hold on.
That's interesting.
There's another side of that, but they have to spend money on storage, backups, everything, infrastructure, management, policy, so many things to do that. And it's like, this is the other interesting side of it, because if you can be a small company and use @sign, then you don't have to invest in any of that either, right? I mean, that's the other side of it, right? Yeah. I was actually thinking about when you mentioned the @login, also it's worth mentioning that there's a whole thing around as a developer when you build an app and you have a login with email password or something. You've now got to obviously have security policy and stuff around email password, how you might do that. Most people maybe use Firebase, great. But at the end of the day is you now have to validate emails, you have to send emails, there's a whole lot of other work you still have to do. Where with this principle of @logging, you go to the website, you scan a QR code, and you're in. There is no, you're validated, you have, but not just validated your login, you've proved who you say you are explicitly. There's no way you cannot be that because you've had to use the encryption and double encryption and various other things. So you have proof that you are not just who you say you are, but it's also valid. And I think that's the side of the coin. In a simple scan of a QR code, that's a big deal.
I think it's a big deal. The other thing, just to expand it even further, we're working with some scary companies that want to log in with @login, but they also want to make sure that it's really you. So it's not only cryptographic you, it's really the human you that's there. So this is where our protocol allows what we call attestations. Attestation. So you can go to a third party that provides that attestation. So somebody that both parties trust, and take a selfie picture or selfie video, and they will scan it and just say they won't give away your identity, but they'll say to the log site, the website you're trying to log into, yes, that really is our Colin. So there's additions. We were only at the beginning, I guess, of this.
Okay, so there's two other mechanisms that I know of that I've used in building apps, and that is IDMV, so IDM verification, which is basically that you scan a driver license, passport, you then take a selfie, and they compare to make sure that face is the one that's on the real deal, and then they verify that you've got a real identifiable piece of information, and then now they can link the two things together and say the person holding the device is the person in this identifier, and that is also a valid identifier. So you kind of get
the key here is that the website doesn't need to know that. The website, all they need to know is that the third party has said, yes, that is our Colin, that's the Colin you know, and they don't have to see your photograph. You don't have to give that away to somebody else.
From a perspective of a developer, sorry, hold on to that thought, Scott. From a perspective of a developer, this is pretty much exactly what we've been doing. Well, not exactly. Sorry, let me just be clear. This is pretty much what the current system of certificates and SSL and all of that does. Where your certificate authority is the person that you trust, right? To have validated that person on the other end and issued their certificate, and they're your attestation in that sort of scenario, right? You're doing your key exchange with them. However, you want to verify the key is a real key, and that's where you go to the certificate authority to get their verification, or the computer does.
Yeah. So you just decide who that attester is between yourself. Sorry, Scott. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. You're fine. And I want to throw out a word of warning, Robbie. If you keep coming up with good comments, I'm going to drag you back on the stream again. Robert Felker brought up. I'm sorry, a very interesting one. A GDPR compliance failure for a company cost them, right there, over 2 million euros. So there is a real financial incentive for large companies to see this succeed. Yeah. Now, let's say I was running a company and I said, look, Colin, you're running this great big financial institution. You've got tremendous GDPR exposure.
Yep.
I can take care of your data for you, and therefore I have that risk because I'm the one who's got the data, right? Mm-hmm. And you can contract with me for this, but instead of actually housing the data, I turn around and use @sign. So now I don't have any of the data, and you're paying me to make sure you don't get fined
Yep.
and I'm handling it. So, but no, I mean, in all seriousness, there are a lot of companies out there who, when they look at GDPR, it would almost be better for them to turn around and try to help fund @Sign in order to get you guys popular, or even just tell their customers, hey, here's our app, okay, for our company, and it uses @Sign, so now they're covered.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I had this conversation I had this conversation 3 hours ago with a gentleman, and we were talking about it because we're planning possibly to do his app. And one of his big concerns is, we're looking at possibly being a little 8-10 person shop, and GDPR.
Yeah.
What on earth are you going to do with only a few people? And you can't juggle all this because GDPR has been such a nightmare. And this really, that's your big sell.
Yeah.
Financially, for large institutions, to make dealing with GDPR easy for smaller shops.
It has to be said, another interesting point that I've seen, and that is GDPR came in, and then people were like, you know what? Like companies just, you know what? We apply that everywhere. Doesn't matter if you're not covered by, so in America and everything else where GDPR doesn't necessarily apply legally speaking, they'll just say, no, we apply it, because it's just easier. If you've already built it, just enable it for everyone, and everyone gets that concept, right? So,
but over here, really, the attitude is that if you're going to do business in Europe, you need to worry about it.
Oh yeah, no. I'm agreeing with you, but what I'm just saying, the other bonus side of it is that Americans get the benefits of GDPR without actually having it be part of law. Does that make sense? Digitally speaking, they can press delete my data, and that's another side of the coin, right?
Yeah,
so,
and if you add the part of data breaches as well, right, Simon and Scott, because of the way this is architected, and the amount of money people spend in protecting against data breaches, lawsuits against that because of the decentralized model that you see here, even if someone were to hack, and the way the cryptography and all is architected here, you'd best get to one person's data, right? You have to do that for every single person. For you,
each one encrypted individually, and
yeah. So that's a lot of savings as well. The way the system's architected.
I think there's a lot of pressure as well on the company. Just one final point, Simon, if I may. At the moment, if there's a breach, what's the worst that can happen? We had a breach, we've got to advertise it. Maybe you get fined, X million dollars. Fine, you can write it off. What you can't write off is there's been a breach, and all my customers can say, no, I'm not going to share anything with you. That has to make the world a better place.
I'm going to I don't know if this could be controversial, but I'm bringing this up now. You just reminded me of this kind of notion of Facebook taking over WhatsApp right recently, and then people get concerned over the privacy because suddenly.
Is anyone else getting packet loss on Simon, or is it just me?
Yeah, I am as well. Yeah. It's every other packet.
We're losing Simon.
Okay, hang on a minute. Let's try and not share my screen. Does that help?
You're sharing your screen? Oh, you're sharing your screen, but you don't have it displayed on StreamYard.
Let's see. How's my audio now? Sorry.
Oh, much better. Yeah, you're much better now.
Your audio is good. Your video is terrible, but
yeah, we just need to.
Anyway, let's move on. Anyway, so my like as I was saying, like WhatsApp being bought out by Facebook, and then of course Facebook upgrades the app, adds in lots of privacy stuff, and then of course they suddenly lose a lot of customers because they're like, no, Facebook's now getting all this extra. They're asking for all this extra private data that I wasn't giving out before, and people moving away from WhatsApp to other alternative services now, right? So I think that there could be a continuum. You can expect that if you had a company and you had a data breach, it's simple now for people to move to an alternative service, right? There's so many options.
There's another thing too. If credit cards are kept client side and handled through this, companies don't need to worry about that data breach either.
Isn't that great?
The more companies use @Sign, the less they have to be responsible for.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if your credit card does get stolen, it's so much easier just to change it in one place. One of our CEO had a credit card stolen, and it was a pain for Barbara to update it in X number of places. That's sort of crazy, but I know I've been through that as well, and it was really difficult. And I always forget one, and a bill goes overpaid. No fun at all.
Shall I get back to sharing my screen actually while we're here?
Do the code, Simon. We want to see code.
I'm sure people are interested to look at some code. I do apologize if my if the connection breaks up.
You're better now.
Well, hopefully we'll see what happens. Right. So what I've got going on here, I'm running. So as part of the @sign setup, you can there's a process that I think it what was is this all described on @sign.dev, or is it?
Yeah, @sign.dev is where to go.
Yeah. So @sign.dev down there. If you can go there and you can install the Docker image, and then you'll get what I'm going to share on the screen now, which is you can get to install it. I won't go into details. So you run it up, and then if you don't have Docker, you need to install Docker. This essentially runs the server environment on your local dev machine. And if you follow the instructions on an IP address, not necessarily this one, this is on my machine, but follow the instructions. Did someone just yawn? Did someone just yawn with their microphone on? I'm going to help with a sigh.
It wasn't me.
Might have been my dog. Who knows? I have headphones in, so I wouldn't have heard it.
Anyway, it's not boring. It's not boring, guys. No. Right. So yeah, and you'll have the supervisor D running. This is a way of monitoring services. I won't go into the details, but what we can see here is these are some of the test @signs. Now, something I'll show you right now, just as this is just to bring some people up to speed. If you want to start playing around, is there's a package called @demo_data. And @demo_data supplies all this, it's got some maps in here. I won't go into it. By the way, the code I've got here is public. You can go check it out. I'll make sure it's pushed by the end of the stream. But all of these are the keys for all these different @signs. Now, to be clear, if you notice that all these @signs actually have emojis in, emojis are valid in people's @signs. So if you notice, all of these have the little tool symbol there, meaning that these are developer @signs, right? Not real people's @signs. So just to be clear, that's obviously you're going to have to copy paste because it's going to might impact on the way that you use these. Okay, so just to be clear to those out there. So what I've actually done is I've built a small simple Flutter app at the moment, and I'll bring that up on the screen here. But in the premise is that I'm forcefully logging in just as a hard-coded @sign. I use you can see the code, but basically this takes the @sign from those @demo data, returns a JSON encoded set of data, which is used as the payload to authenticate. So this is how my app is authenticating to my local server running here, to the Docker instance running as @bob toolsign. So once that is then authenticated, I can then do things with that @sign, like write keys, write private data, encrypted private data to my local @sign store. I won't go into the details right now. Anyway, so this is the little app. It's pretty basic, nothing magical here. Then once you've logged in, I take you to the home screen of the app, and the home screen of the app currently has a QR code reader built into it. And this is going to, once it gets the QR code data back, it just writes that data into, under the key test, into the data store, right? Now, this literally is like making your map, making this data available. And because I'm doing public, it's available to everyone. Now, if the server had in this case, if the web server had an @sign, I can make it only available to that @sign. And this is the key thing. So now it's a private exchange between the two parties. We'll come back to that in a minute. So for the moment, that's the app side of things. And then I've also down here got a separate module, which is a web server, which we're actually running right now, which I'll just confirm. Yep, we're running right now. And I've got some like logging stuff and some various things. And I won't go into detail. It's all there. But in short, this is going to attempt to log into @bob. So if I it's running right now. I haven't got any boxes filled out. We're going to do some nice web WebSocket stuff eventually. But if I refresh this, this is the new challenge key that I've generated. And currently, the server is fetching the current one that my device had, because I've used this before, which is the incorrect key, BQ. So if I refresh the homepage, this QR code now represents that data. And then if I bring over my device, bear with me, bring over my device. There we go. What I should be able to do is say login. Now that's logging me into my local @ it's taking me into the screen. And now here is the QR code. And if I read that QR code, I haven't got any reaction on the screen right now. However, what's happening now is now the server, the web server, has registered that it's got the new data. So that's the round trip that's actually happened. Now the server can validate that's the key that it had, and then take you to the next step, which is to actually log you into your web server service, whatever it is, and validate that you've logged in. And that's it. Honestly, it might seem that the descriptions of having all this, I'll just stop the screen share just so we get some bandwidth back. That kind of notion of talking about encryption and everything, you don't really have to care too much about the encryption. That's the key point about this, right? That you're right. You're basically using it as a data store. You're storing data and then you're retrieving data. And there's a way of scanning for data, right? And scanning is like listing a directory, if you will. So the interesting part about this is that's it. We've got two different systems, two different machines, essentially. My mobile device and my local web server accessing the same data points securely, right? And that's the key point here. They're accessing that data securely, and in this case, they're going to be doing a key exchange. So I did try and get through that very quickly, but I think when we come back to this, I think I want to come back to this in a future at some point in the future and show it all working end to end, very pretty and nice and everything else. And we'll have like maybe some mock service that you can log into to access shared files or something. I don't know.
Absolutely.
One thing I want to point out real quick before we get too far away from it, I can see a lot of people in the video are going to be saying, "How is he doing that? What is he doing?" Da, da, da. That was screen copy, wasn't it? What you used right there.
SCRCPY. It allows you to view your mobile device on your computer on multiple platforms.
Right. So what he was doing, it's something that we use in development. You render to your physical device, but your physical device is actually mirrored onto the screen. Yeah. So yes, he was actually holding up a phone at the screen, but what his phone saw, you saw. And that's why, because what it made it look like was the emulator was actually looking at the QR code. It was like, wait, what?
So the reason why there's when you're developing with I've got this set up a very particular way so I can do this, but I recommend to anyone else that wants to pick up @dev and start playing around with @ and how it all, the sort of @ protocol and how it all works. Use the emulator, because your emulator has access to the local host. That's where the initial Docker instance is. It's follow the instructions. The instructions will tell you what you need to do, and it should work. If there is any problems, there are, I think, if I remember, guys said you could have a Discord channel that people can reach out.
We have a big Discord channel, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway,
I'm going to link for that is in the chat, by the way, for screen copy.
Yeah,
yeah. I've put that at the bottom of the screen, and yeah. Did you put it in the YouTube chat?
Yeah, there's a different. Oh, you put it under releases, and yeah, there's another one.
I put it in the. I put it in the chat for everyone if anyone wants to get it. Yeah, releases is where you can download the individual downloads for the different platforms. Sure. Otherwise, it's open source. You can play around with it. But off topic, I would actually like to share. I didn't share it on screen, and I will share it right now in the YouTube chat. That is the URL. I'll put it on the screen as well for anyone that's watching. That is the URL for what I'm working on right now. It's all, as I said, everything that @ is doing is that @ Foundation. You can go there anytime and look up all the protocol and all the details, all open source, and you can find my stuff there, and that'll be updated shortly. getting back to the point, I really like what you guys are doing, and we've been talking about it quite a lot. I think I'd like to bring on some of our other guests that we have, and we'll start doing a QA panel. I'd like to, anyone, if you're asking questions, we'll get into the QA section. We'll start off with any related questions around @sign and security and privacy while we have the guys here. And then we'll get into general Flutter QA questions in a minute. So if you want your question answered, please put it in the comments, the live chat, and please try and use the hashtag. If you can, please feel free. If we don't get to them now, copy your questions into Twitter and do @sign. What's your Twitter handle, guys? It's @sign company. I tell you what, put it in the chat.
I'll get it.
And we'll put it on the screen. But yeah, if you want to do it there, please feel free to tag it with hashtag Humpday Q&A, so the guys know that it came from this live chat. Do we have a Randall? I think we have a Randall around here.
And actually, I've got a quick question.
Here's Randall.
Yeah, while we're bringing everybody in.
Yeah.
If I understand it correctly, the data is actually just kept client side, so nobody has to worry about storing it or the liability of storing it, correct? How do we handle that across multiple devices? Or do I have to put it into my desktop one time and my phone another time and my toaster another time because it's going to be running Fuchsia?
Do you mind if I explain this a little bit, guy from my perspective?
Go for it, Simon. Yeah.
Tell me if I'm wrong. Okay?
I'm sure you're right.
I hear back. We have a Mariano. Mariano, welcome.
How's it going, everyone?
Welcome to the stream. I'll just crack on with this answer here. So the idea is that you have a root server, right, which does the initial lookup of a secondary server. Secondary server is your location that stores the data. Now that could be on your mobile phone if you wanted to. You could have your mobile phone host the data, but then any service out there, and let's say @BBC, as we were saying earlier, we have to access it from your mobile phone, right? So when it needs to access that data, which can be a problem, right? So from what I understand, Colin, and so you're going to be hosting secondary servers that people will store the data.
When you sign up for an @sign, you activate it. You get a microservice dedicated just for you, and there's two reasons for that. The first reason is the way the internet is wired at the moment. You may well be connected to the internet on your phone, but the internet might not be able to actually see you. So you might be behind a network address translator, a firewall, a proxy. That will change over time as 5G rolls out, and you'll have a dedicated, probably IPv6 IP address that stays with your phone. But for the moment, that's not the way it works. So you need to have a point of presence on the internet that has a dedicated IP address and port number. So each one of these microservices has a dedicated IP address and port number just for you. So that's the first reason. The second reason is people switch off their phones, and you want to be able to give an answer to some questions when your phone's off or offline or whatever. So that's the two reasons why we have microservices. I'd
like to clarify that just a point there, and that is your thought there, Scott. I'm going to try and catch you out here. That data, even though it's stored in a microservice with @sign, it's stored with keys that only you have on your.
Yeah, we haven't got the keys. Yeah, we literally cannot see.
That they are storing the data on your behalf. They cannot read the data.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Unless it's public. There is a way of storing public data, and guess what? We can see public data because it's public.
But in general, the principle is like your data is stored at rest. It's not just encrypted at rest, but it has to be decrypted with your keys. Therefore, you're in control of that, right?
Yeah.
So we want to make it. This is one of our watchwords. It's provably true that we can't see your data unless it's public. Let's call it.
And then, I will just make so the other side of this coin, and just to be, and tell me if I'm wrong, Colin.
Yep.
We'll continue with the @BBC principle.
Yeah, why not?
But let's say they have access to a piece of your data, it preferences for their service, your name, your email, whatever it is.
Yep.
That data is re-encrypted essentially for them with their key, and therefore, once you've given access, you can revoke that key. So that's why, you can essentially
We don't even revoke the key, but the protocol actually says there's something called cascade delete. So we don't even have to. We could change the data and re-encrypt it with a key they haven't got. That's one approach. But the way we actually do it is we use this cascade delete, which is essentially you've got data you shouldn't have. You've got to delete it, and the protocol it makes sure that that's so. So there's a contract, if you like, between the reader of that data and the protocol itself.
But my principle was just saying that was just about the fact that yes, you've got your key,
and
you have access, but you still haven't given your key over to anyone else, right? You're not giving.
No, you never give your key to anybody else. You encrypt it end to end. So if you're going to send some data to, if you're going to give access to your data from the BBC, right? From the BBC, so the BBC can get access to your data. You will encrypt that with a. I'm going to get a little bit of details. Well, you will encrypt that data with a symmetric key, so a AES key, and then you actually encrypt the AES key with the public key that you can get on the app protocol that the BBC is advertising. So the way that works is interesting because there's two reasons why you have to do that. Maybe you've got a group of people that all want to have access to their data. You don't want to be encrypting with an AES key for everybody. You just want to encrypt the keys to get to the data. So that's a little sneaky. And the other reason is RSA keys can't encrypt much data. They're not designed to encrypt lots and lots of data or streams of data. AES keys are. So that's actually how we do it.
I guess that also varies in terms of if you're doing CBC or C. What's the other type? Oh, okay. Yeah, CBC and the one where you base your key off the previous stuff, so you have.
Yeah, we're not actually we're not stepping keys like they call it ratcheting in the protocols like WhatsApp, the WhatsApp protocol, the Signal protocol. It actually is the Signal protocol. So the Signal protocol is used in WhatsApp, it's used in Telegram, and it's used strange enough in Signal. And that's a ratcheting protocol. We're not ratcheting at all. We're actually using the key that you specified, and if you want to change it, you can change it. So,
to Randall, Marianne, do you have any questions around @sign and @company and the app protocol and all of this stuff?
I only have about 20 I type into the chat room. I'll just pick a few since we don't have much time. One of the things I'm curious about is, okay, you're @Colin.
Yeah.
What happens to the second Colin?
Tough luck. There's only one. There can't be only one.
No, serious problem because you're reducing everything down to a simple name set. And I know that I've seen Twitter handles that get confused and all sorts of things.
Exactly.
What are you going to do about that naming problem?
Yeah, exactly. So we want to provide I'm an old network guy. So, before we had DNS, I do remember those days. We used to shove a etc host file around all the servers. And, old network hacks like me can remember IP addresses, but most normal people can't. And we've got to exactly the same stage with all the handles, right? So, I know at this, at that, whatever the platform is, we need a level of abstraction that can go across them all. So the @sign also provides that level of abstraction. So, yeah.
But then what about name squatting? What if somebody gets Randall Schwartz before I do?
Well, that could happen. That's why we added emojis into the app protocol and every other Unicode character. So pick a favorite hobby of yours, stick a emoji in. We've got a couple of people that have actually done that already. So they've stick an emoji in to make it personalized.
And how do you read that over the phone?
How do you type it in the phone generally? And it's yeah.
Okay, so I'm dealing with a bank and I want to log into their software, and I can't just say I'm @Randall. I have to say I'm @Randall. The little face sticking out to the left, downward.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not very practical. I don't think.
Still do what you do on Twitter, right? And that is have @RandallSort2 or 10 or whatever your handle is, or
whatever.
This would be the same, right? I do agree with you, but this would be the same as if it was any service, right? Like you have to have a unique identifier. That would normally be your email address in a lot of places, but the kind of concern there is that we're then giving away a piece of identifiable information that's personal to you, and that people would know spam. These things get spammed all the time. The other side of this coin, Randall, is the @ is not necessarily anything that anyone has to remember. It's an identifier, right?
Sure.
So the other option of this is there's free randomized. As far as I understand it, guys, I'm not.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. We have essentially that's right. We have
words. Is it
several options if you want to buy an @. If you want a particular @, you're going to have to pay for it. That's how we make money.
Man. No.
There you go.
If you want a random one, or you want to pick a couple of topics, then we can actually generate you one. And we have many people that are running with those. A lot of people running with those, and that's just
So instead of Google domains, it's going to be Google Ads.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
earlier, I believe I understood you that, like, for example, if I'm setting up a new login on a website, I would have to specifically on my mobile device then authorize that website to know some things about me.
You don't have to. You could let you know nothing about you.
Right, but let's say like things that deliver to my street address, so they'll need to know my street address. Is there a way of categorically bringing possible requesters together so I don't have to keep individually authorizing all these things for each one of those transactions?
Good question. Kevin, do you want to take that?
Yeah, that's so we have this a notion of what's called a persona, which is exactly designed for that. So you can actually create kind of a template for different things. And we have, it's really interesting to look at what people are sharing with each other. So for example, in the Buzz app, there's an example of somebody who's sharing with an artist friend only some photographs. No personal details at all. No name, phone number, email, nothing. But here's some photographs that are attributed to at Alice in that case was the example. And so so you can share whatever you want to. And it doesn't have to be textual information. It could be rich media information, which is kind of interesting. But so those are all built into what's called a persona. So I could create an artist persona that I'm going to share with my artist friends, and a hiking persona I'm going to share with my hiking friends, a professional persona for professional friends, and so on. So you can group a set of information together into a persona. That's a first-class citizen in our reference implementation as well. So that's encourages people to make it easier to not have, instead of having to do data administration yourself, now you can just kind of have more of a self-expression model where I create a view of myself that I want to share with people and then use that over and over again.
So that consumes even more addresses.
Right? No, those are personas. Those are just named personas.
But how do you specify the name? Is it separate from specifying
it's
like an @Randall?
Yeah, so it's just a collection of, each thing you're sharing, if I'm sharing a photograph or a phone number or whatever, each one of those is a name value pair that's stored in your database, in your own personal data.
Right.
So the persona will group those individual shares together into a bucket or a group that you can put a name on that says, these are for friends, or the individual shares. But each one of those is an explicit grant of a right to the other person. And
so that's a separate namespace from the @space?
It's not even, it's because it's the namespace itself. It's just it's an abstract, it's just
something used during the handshake, I guess, right? To be able to say guys.
Yeah, so it's not actually in the protocol. Essentially it's the way you answer. So the way the protocol works is you always know who's asking before you have to give the answer. So what you're basically saying is, if this person's asking, I'm going to give this answer. So if @Kevin's asking, then I'm going to give a bunch of photographs. If @BBC's asking, then I'm going to give whatever details I want to give the BBC. So it
reminds me of the very old days when women used to be able to give out their phone number without a guy checking it right away. So if it's really cool guy, give them my phone number. If it's creepy guy,
You can
give them
decide
the
later
number for
now.
dial a prayer.
Exactly.
So
They actually used to give out the number for dial a prayer. And actually, I do have one other I need to break in with. I mean, Randor, are you just continuing on the same thing? Or you got something else?
No, I've got 2 more questions from that list that are high priority. Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, I know we want to take questions from the audience, stuff like that, but I had a bunch that I had while they were talking. So just, what's the funding model here? Is it vendors paying for this to work, or subscription by users? What's your funding model?
How are you going to get paid, Kevin? Yeah, so we actually pay developers. So we make money on people buying ad signs. So there's free ad signs. We expect that 90% or more will be free, using free ad signs. And if they want to have a particular brand, we do charge money for it, and that's how we try to keep the number of name squatters and that kind of stuff to a minimum, is by putting. I mean, the friction point is you have to buy a name that you that has value. So corporations like at BMW would be one. At Colin is another that Colin bought and paid for. At Kevin, I bought and paid for. So that's how we make money. And the developers that are building apps with this, we actually, if people are buying an ad sign because of their app, we pay them 20% commission. So we're kind of the first developer platform that doesn't cost a developer money. We actually pay you money.
Nice.
Okay. Go ahead, Scott. Go with the next one.
Actually, totally different subject. Something that we've got going on in the YouTube chat that's a really interesting point. For those of you around the world who are not familiar with this, I need to do some quick background. In the United States, we have a series of laws called HIPAA. Short version, it's GDPR for your medical records. And it also means that you have to be able to, that the P stands for portability. So you have to be able to move your medical records around with you. This looks like it was tailor-made for HIPAA, because hospitals no longer have to be liable for hanging on to all that damn data. And you can take it wherever you want. You go to this doctor, they get access. You go to this other doctor, you don't have to wait for anything to be transferred. You don't have to wait for anything to be printed. You can't lose your medical records. You know, the hospitals can't get sued because they gave them to the wrong person. You know, it's much, much less likely that you're going to go into surgery for your right shoulder and come out that they did the job on your left one or on your hip because they read the wrong record. But no, in all seriousness, this looks like it was tailor-made for HIPAA.
Yeah. Go ahead, Anthony. I'm sure you're going to say the same thing.
I was acknowledging that indeed. I mean, we've spoken to and talking to a number of other healthcare providers of potentially doing proof of concepts pilots with the same model as well. And it can extend to pharmacies as well, right? I mean, even today, if you see pharmacies that, you know, just make random calls to you saying, hey, do you want this prescription extended? You know, through the ad protocol, you can put an end to that. I mean, say, you know, I'll reach out when I want my refill, and you can pull that information back if you want relocating from one place to another. All of it is at your fingertips versus you know, somebody else dictating those terms to you.
I'm kind of concerned. We only have a few minutes for you guys left, so we have a question here in the chat. I don't know if you got to this while I had to step away there.
No.
If your phone gets stolen or lost, is your app protocol data then compromised? If so, can we remotely remove it? Do you guys have an answer for that one? Shall I leave it to one of you?
So if the phone gets lost or stolen, your data's still on that device for sure. However, the keys are in the keychain, so you have to obviously break open the phone first of all, and then get into the keychain to get hold of the keys.
Yeah.
Again, it's there's a little bit of app developer input here. So if this is data that's like super sensitive, and you think your people base is going to be worried about this, then you can obviously put fingerprint reader or whatever on before you can get to the keychain. So I mean, but other bits of data, maybe you're not worried about that. Maybe it's the lost and found app. You probably don't want to have that, right? So.
And also, is it really any different than your bank account information is now?
Pretty much exactly the same. But the keys to open up the data are obviously on the keychain. So,
but I'm right
into there first of all.
So when you say keychain, what you're talking about is the hardware.
The hardware encrypted keychain on the mobile device. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
keychain, and then on Android it's called something slightly different.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's pretty much the same exposure you have with any other app. Can you remotely delete it? I don't think actually we've got that functionality now. So that's actually a really good idea. We could probably think about that.
I do actually know that the keychain itself can be remotely wiped with Android administrator stuff. So
okay. So delete that, and then your data's gone.
This is the thing, right? There are ways to like iOS has the Find device. I think you can remote wipe your device if it gets stolen as well.
Yeah,
but you have those capabilities already. So I wouldn't say that you would need to put that into yours. I mean, you can revoke keys, I guess. I mean, that's the other thing, right? If you want to assign to your secondary, then
you can just delete all that stuff and it'll reset.
Well, and if you have it on multiple devices, such as your laptop, your desktop, and your phone, you can disable one remotely from the others, possibly.
Yep.
And one other suggestion, really quick, because I know you all have to go, but if you were to make the @signs non-transferable, that would definitely shut down the squatting problem real fast, because once you buy it, you're stuck with it.
That's pretty neat. So we do actually ask for a renewal fee every year. That's really to make sure that the namespace doesn't get full up. Although our namespace is ridiculously large because we've got it's a Unicode namespace. There's nothing worse than an at-sign there that's been used and never to be used again. So that's we've seen that with other platforms. So Twitter is sort of famous for having an awful lot of Twitter handles that are just dead, and every so often they go and cull them. And I don't know whether you've been culled yourself, but it's really annoying to try and get back your Twitter handle. So we want to avoid that and pay renewal fee. So
there is a side to that. There is a side I did want to mention, and that is people are talking about like, oh my god, I have to pay. You're not paying for a piece of text, your name. You're paying for the fact that they have storage, they have bandwidth fees. You're paying for the service of
it's a service, yeah, exactly right. So you're paying for the name, but then it's the service ongoing. So we have to run the microservers. We have to run the big fat root server. There's a whole bunch of Kubernetes magic that goes on. So yeah, we have pretty significant costs.
I just want to be clear about that point, because some people are like, you're paying for a name, or why am I paying just for this name? It's not just the name; it's everything behind the name, right?
Exactly.
Okay, guys. Let's see if there's any last-minute things in the chat.
Simon, before we go, we just wanted to share something to the community. If you allow me to share my screen.
Yeah, share your screen. Yeah, go ahead.
Happy birthday, Simon. Tomorrow is Simon's birthday, so on behalf of the entire Flutter community, happy birthday, Simon.
So will it start an hour late?
Yeah. Well, that's coming off the screen pretty quick now. Screen time I get. Oh, thank you, guys. Yeah. One more year, eh? One more year. It'll go so quickly.
Someone is blushing.
All right.
Wonderful. And
Well,
happy birthday, John, by the way. Somebody else.
Happy birthday. So,
John's birthday as well. Excellent.
Thank you very much for joining us, guys. Happy to have you back anytime. I think there's a real potential in what you guys are doing, and I think the world can really do with it. So hopefully we'll be seeing some more things around what you're doing. I'm very excited to see what happens with it.
So how can I monetize it? By telling companies I'll take care of their GDPR problem by hooking them up with you.
But this is the thing, right? Like I think that the more we see @sign integrated into apps, the more we're going to see, it more prevalent, and then it becomes like, oh, just like you say right now, just find me on WhatsApp, or just find me on this thing, or just Twitter me, tweet me or Facebook me or whatever it is. It becomes @sign at that point, right? But there has to be critical mass, and I think the only way you get critical mass is by developers using this service, so not just us as developers get to use a service that respects our privacy, but also our users, right? So it's a shift. It's definitely a shift, but I think it's a good shift in the right direction.
Thanks so much for having us, Simon and team.
Yeah, thanks so much, Tom. A lot of fun.
We'll speak soon.
We have CCPA, California Consumer Privacy Act, which is similar to GDPR. We're seeing the regulation happen in the U.S. as well, and there's I think 11 other states that are implementing privacy legislation, as well as some stuff at the federal level. So we might eventually catch up with GDR, maybe.
Yeah,
guys, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Simon.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, Ryan.
So, guys, welcome back. Good to have you back on here. Let's see. So, I don't think we missed any great questions, any big sort of questions there for @sign. I mean, we were talking for a lot about that, and I think people got to absorb all the information if they want to talk about that. However, we are now open for all general questions. If you have any Flutter question whatsoever in the entire whole web world, put it in the chat, and we'll see what we can do about answering it.
But use short words.
Yeah, we're not too good without English, as you can tell.
Use simple words.
And please use the hashtag Humpday Q&A. If you have any questions that we don't get to today, feel free to tweet them, and we'll try and collect them for next stream. We probably don't have any time for questions that we didn't get to last stream, so we'll leave that. We spoke a bit too long about @sign, so we'll leave them for next week. So please keep your questions coming in. We love answering your questions. Randall especially loves answering questions, don't you, Randall?
Yes, seems to be my bent.
So let's see what we have in our comments.
The only question that I saw lately under a Flutter related one is the how to adjust the UI depending on the screen sizes. Bear in mind the whole web desktop thing. There's so many widgets that you can use. We have one from the community, right? That you did, I believe, Simon. It has, or you recommended. Can't remember right now.
Sorry, which one? Sorry, say again.
I remember a long time ago, more than 2 years, that you recommended one widget that it will give you the different brackets depending on the sizes, and it will tell you the constraints.
It's the one by Rodian made it, didn't he? Rodian Davids made it. It was.
I think it was.
Starts at Breakpoint. It's called Breakpoint.
Yeah, and you also have he created one for a scaffold that it updates the menus and the position of the floating action buttons and all the stuff. But it's also the constraint box, the container as well. It has constraints, media query, so many options to check.
Yeah, was it layout builder?
Layout builder. Yes.
Media query are the other ones. And in fact, that's how these apps are made. You go look at the source code of Breakpoint, you'll see it uses layout builder, media query. I mean,
no magic.
Randall, welcome back.
Yes, I blame StreamYard, but okay.
Okay. So questions. Let's see if we have any other questions going through here. I'm going to skip forward. I don't see any from the past, so we'll skip forward here. Is it possible to use event channel in background? I've created a foreground service in native code in Android module, and event channel doesn't work in the app. Okay, so
now on a follow-up with this, sorry, but I had mentioned a couple other places to check. but this person says that they have checked a long list of places, including FSG, GitHub, Discord. So if you can answer this one, that might be really interesting.
It's a very complex topic, right? You're entering different environments. It's not a simple one for sure. And there are two really good examples of doing stuff in the background with Dart, and that is the Android Alarm Manager package, and then the Firebase messaging package, which lets you do background messaging.
Yes.
Both basically that you register callbacks from your Dart, and then your native code can then use that to call back into your Dart code. Now, the key here is you don't use event channels. That's when you're going wrong. So event channels, you can do it, but it becomes a complex proposition because it's your main isolate, that is your primary isolate that does the UI, that has to use the event channels right now in the current situation. Meaning that if you start up a background isolate or background stuff handling with Dart, you end up in a situation where you can't use event channels. But what you can do is do isolate to isolate communication.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, what you end up doing is you start your background isolate with your data, whatever it is, or you could store it on the disk. I mean, here's another thing, right? You store it on the disk, but then you need to signal to your app that it should do something with it. I think the key problem here is you've asked specifically about event channels and not about what you're trying to achieve with this foreground service. So if you can enlighten us a little bit about why you're trying to use a foreground service in this way, or what you're trying to do, maybe that's the answer. But if you look at those two examples I mentioned, they will start a Dart instance in the background, and you just call your code. You can just literally set main.dart. You can have a different entry point called background.dart, and you just run that, and it will run the main function in background.dart, and it will just go off and run your Dart code in the background. There's no problem there whatsoever.
Could an example for that one be getting in the background if your phone has connection or not?
Say again, if your phone.
Just as an example, that you try to send something in your app and you couldn't send it, so you got like a draft or something, but in the background having like a cron job
or a retry.
Task. Exactly, and it will retry in the background for you, but you need to first make sure that you read if the phone has connection in order to send it, or to send the user, now that you have connection, you can send it. That could be a really good use of something in the background you could use.
I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to share my screen here because something that answers this question. A lot of people don't know about this, and it's one of those things that's. Let me see if I can find it here. Hang on, this one, I believe. Do you guys see this?
Not yet. No. You got to put it on screen.
There. Yep, you need to push it.
There we go. Right. So what we're looking at here is I'll put the URL on screen.
Oh, I've seen this for Android, but not for Flutter. Interesting.
So api.flutter.dev/javadoc. It's how you get the API resources for how to use those native interfaces in your plugins and in your foreground services and all this fun stuff. The other side of this, I'll put it in the chat here, and the other one that's available is the Objective-C doc, which is this one. And again, I'll put on the URL on the screen. And this one is this one here. And it also has, I'll put the URL in the chat for anyone that wants to play along. These are where you get the documentation for where you want to. If it's Swift, you're still using the Objective-C interfaces just in the Swift way, right? So the documentation doesn't really change. So if we go back to the Java one, I just want to point this out. So I'll make it a bit bigger for everyone. And what we're going to do down here, we're going to go find the Dart executor, and this is the instance of the Dart engine. Configures, bootstraps, and starts Dart execution of code. And in here, you can specify Dart entry point, and that's how you configure. And this you can see here: entry point function, entry point library, and path to bundle. And that's literally, you can start any Dart code that you have. So you can have multiple bundles that you ship with your app. You can have multiple different libraries. And you have the library header that you put in your top of your thing. So by default, if your package for your app is called, I don't know, app or whatever you named your project, you'll find it in the top of your pubspec YAML. That's the library. And then your library and also the file name, if I remember rightly. Yeah, library or file location. Yeah. So this is package : the name of your package / main.dart, for example. And then the function by default is main, right? And that tells you what function to run. And as you can see here, you can build up the path to bundle and your entry point, and you can just run that code. You know, there's create default, and create default creates the one with main.dart and main function. And you can provide that to the Dart executors. I can't remember where it is there. Execute Dart callback, execute Dart entry point. There you go. So you call this function here with an entry point that points to whatever Dart code that you want, that you've compiled with your app, and you can go run that in the background. It's that simple. I'm glossing over it, right? I mean, like, you still have to debug your app. You still might have to do things. It's not as straightforward as ABC, but at the end of the day that's the interface that you're missing that you need to go look at. Anyway, let's move on. Do we have any other questions?
Yes, we do have. We got a
And
Stefan.
before you get on that, I'm going to have to step out.
No problem.
2 hours is my limit today.
Okay, well, we'll be finishing up soon anyway. We're just going to answer a few more questions. So get your questions in now. Thanks, Scott, for joining us. Really appreciate your time, man.
We'll see you again
We
next week.
also have a question from George related to code push, but
let's get down. Let's go. I'm going to go top down here. Oh yeah.
so that's related to just-in-time React Native code push.
Right. So it's interesting actually, right? Because there is, as far as I understand, first of all, there is no reason why you can't receive a bundle. And so when you build your app, you're building if you build it as AOT, you get a shared object, a binary file. There's no reason you couldn't put that on a server and download it. Let's say for Android at least, right? Now iOS, you could do the same thing, right? You can download binary code if you want to check it's properly signed and various other things. There's also an asset bundle that you can download as well, and then you can ship that, and then you can just overwrite your local files in your project. Now, remember, I don't think people understand this, but I will mention this. So now this is caveated because I haven't looked at the source code for the shell for a while. But when your app starts up for the first time, the where you show the native your let's say on Android splash screen, what it actually does is it extracts the library file. No, sorry. To be clear, the library file is extracted onto disk when you install your app, right? So it's not as part of the APK anymore. And the same goes for the assets as well, I believe. I can't remember. But my point here is you can overwrite those files. And now when you restart your app, you'll be using new code, right? So you can already do this. However, this is really caveated. Apple don't allow it.
No, it doesn't like it. And even with code pushes on iOS, they only allow changes not significant. So if you do a really significant, that you really add a new feature, iOS, Apple, and the App Store will reject your app because you're trying to push features that were not approved inside the code.
So I mean, there's complexities around that, right? Like you might have to clear caches. It's not something that's built in. It is obviously possible for you to do right now if you want to do it. Like the end of the day is your Flutter app is just the same. It's any Android app. If you can do it with Android, you can do Flutter, right? But of course, it's not done for you. And I think this is the key thing. I think I was talking about this earlier. We're talking about. I do want to, since we're on a subject here, this is a bit off topic. So, like null safety, we were talking last week about null safety in these packages, and there's how many packages have been moved to null safety. And I had some people that were talking about, well, this package isn't moved. I can't move my project. No, you can. What you do is you fork their package repo into your GitHub account, GitLab, wherever you want to put it, just on your local computer, wherever. And then you do Dart migrate it, do a PR back to the plugin author and say, I've migrated your app to null safety. And all the tests pass. It's great. Please include me. And they'll probably include your PR and then release it to pub.dev. That's up to them. But in the meantime, inside your pub/spec YAML, you can put dependencies and have a Git dependency. So you put the dependency name, and then underneath it's Git : and then the Git URL. And that can be your forked version that you've updated null safety. And now you're using a null safe version of that package without the package author having to get involved at all. So nothing's stopping you right now from just getting on with it if you want to. But obviously, the key here is you don't want to do that for all 20 dependencies you might, or 100 dependencies you might have, right?
Yeah.
So the key is upgrade, see what ones fail and they're not null safe. And if you've got one or two, or they don't have those packages, reach out to the authors with an issue. And if you want to just get ahead of the curve, do it yourself and send a PR back, right? And then not only does everyone else that have the dependency get the null safety version, but also you get it straight away, and you don't have to wait. So yeah, just to be clear, you don't have to.
Other point related to the code push. Remember, the code push works because they're using just in time and they're not using ahead of time. So
yeah.
There is a caveat in that one. People say like, yeah, but I can push updates to the app without updating the app. True, but it will be in the next run that you run the app. What is stopping you from forcing the users to update the app? Like putting a pop-up that it says update the app, and you're forced. No matter what, you're forced. And the next time you open, you got the changes. It's the same thing.
I was gonna say that the other side of that coin, right, is I don't quite. There is. I mean, there's slightly different like things around there. But yeah, you know, every app I've built for the last 10 years has had a feature where when it first starts, it fetches a remote config file from the server.
I do the same.
What is the minimum version I should be running? If I'm not running the minimum version, pop up with a thing. You're not running the right. You need to update your app. Press this button. It takes them to the Play Store for the app or the Apple App Store for the app. Right? Simple, easy peasy. And what you've just done is you've done a force upgrade. So if you change your API on the server and you have to re-release a new version of your app, you have to force them to use the new version. Therefore, set the minimum version and everyone's force upgraded.
The other thing that people don't know, other than that one, they put in the minimum version of the remote configs, is A/B testing. No one uses that for features. Why? You can deliver 10 features that were not released to the public, and they crank up the number, put it 5%, 10%, 100%. And there you go. You got new features on your phone that you already delivered, but if people didn't have them. But people apparently don't use that much, and they need to use it because there's so many ways to deliver new features without really annoying the users.
So I've got another question coming in.
Yep.
What is the best way in Flutter to address all the settings of a mobile device? How to kill no needed other apps in the background so I can dedicate a mobile device to one app? So first point, best way to address all the settings. You can, I know on Android, you can start the settings intent. You can look up a settings intent. There's actually, we have a package in Flutter called Android Intent. I believe it's just called Android Intent. In fact, I'm going to go check that right now.
Yeah. Also bear in mind that not every single setting will have access, because if that was the reason, then malicious apps will take full control of your phone and do whatever they want. And that's already been happening so many times.
So like you can't get to all the API for all of your email identities because they don't want people sending spam out.
But there is also an option related to the accessibility. So if you get full accessibility into it, so you're allowing users who they have different abilities that they maybe don't use their fingers for it, and they will use a different device in order to move the. If a malicious app wants to control your phone, could kind of trick you into enable that feature, and they will full access into your phone and do whatever they want.
You're going down the rabbit hole. Let's not.
Yes,
So Android Intent is the package you want, and it obviously only works on Android. There is, if you go look it up, there's an intent set. So basically down here where you have action data arguments, there's parameters you pass inside your intent. You can go look them up for what they are on Android to launch the settings app. You can even launch specific settings, like I want my network settings, I want my storage settings. So if you say your storage is low, you need to delete space, you can take them to the storage settings and they can do that. So that's in essence, that's the first part of the question. You can access settings of the device. You can also, there is actually a API, and you can use platform channels to read settings, but you have to have permission. Certain settings you can and can't have access to. That is a native Android question, and it would be different on Android to what it is on iOS. And that's the same. And there might be a package out there for this. I have not looked on pub.dev for accessing device settings, right? And there is also there will also be similar things to doing that on iOS. I'm not sure if you should be able to launch the settings app from a
yes, you can launch the settings. Yes.
/ yeah. So there is ways of doing that on both. You would have to look up on each and then use what we call method channel, also called a platform channel, depending on where you are. So it's a method channel, and that's the plugin development. There is information on flutter.dev on how you use method channels. Google will find you what you need. The last bit, you cannot kill other apps. You're in sandbox. You have no control over that. If you do, I mean, officially you can get control on Android. Your app has to become a admin app, and it gives permissions to play things. I think you guys might. Sorry, I was trying to find the thing. You might have mentioned this.
Yeah,
but that is something you really want to avoid, and I don't know why you would want to do this, because even if you have apps in the background, your system, the operating system for iOS operating system and the Android operating system will close
override everything. Yep.
So basically, if your app needs more resources, let's say you open up your gallery app and you're scrolling through lots and lots of photos, it goes, oh, I need more memory, and shuts down other apps to give your app more memory. So having other apps in the background should not be a problem, full stop, right?
Yep.
Now, if those other apps are actively doing things in the background, then that is going to be, taking up space. But then that's up to the user to do that. So let's say they're listening to a piece of music, they have their music playing in the background, that's actively using resources whilst your app is running. But imagine they open up your app, and then when they open your app, suddenly their music player shuts down. No user wants that, right? So you don't have access to do this. That's it.
There's also a lot of stuff. If you have an Android, you can go to the developer settings, and you can assign how many apps you want them alive in the background. You can put 1 if you want it. You can put 10 if you want it. But still, the OS will decide when it needs the memory, when it's going to kill it. What it does is it normally saves a state of where your app was when it was alive. So when you go back, it will try to generate as much as possible of your previous state.
There's
iOS can do the same, just freeze the entire process, put it on the side, load power and memory on the RAM. And when you go back, you're back. And
I want to be clear about this, because a lot of people don't realize this, and this is how it works on desktop. It works slightly different on desktop, but more or less works the same on desktop. Your one app, let's say you have 1 gigabyte of RAM, and you're running a Chrome instance that needs 4 gigabytes of RAM. It can do that, because what it does is it shares the 1 gigabyte you're currently using, and the rest of the 3 gigabytes puts you on your hard drive. And whenever you access some of that other data, it will pull it off your hard drive and put it back into RAM and get rid of some other stuff out of RAM to make room. And that's what your operating system does all the time. So it can run lots and lots of apps, all potentially using gigabytes and gigabytes more RAM than you actually have on your machine, right?
Yep.
So anyway, let's move on, because we'll have plenty of other questions to get through here. But thank you for the question, Stefan. Hi, folks. Thank you for these 2 packages. This is in relation to what we spoke about earlier, the background stuff. I checked the source code. My use case is to share data stored in room database in Android via event channel to the dark side. Well, you're in luck. You can do that, and that would be with event channel. I'm not sure. You should be able to start up I think the key here is you need to use that. I'll be clear. You need to use the Java doc to go find the current Dart instance that's running. If the main instance is running, then you can send data to it. Otherwise, you don't have to do anything, right? Because in the background, you're storing it in room. So only if your app is running in the foreground that you want to send data from the background to the foreground, which means you already have an isolate running. You can go get the handle to the isolate and send data to it using an event channel. So you can do that, but you need to go get the current isolate and call the event channel on that isolate. Okay, let's crack on. Sorry, guys, just want to get through that. What to do when, unfortunately, app stopped, tried everything, nothing works.
Not a lot of details, but
you're asking us a question we have no vision of. I can tell you how to debug it, And how to debug it is you open up, if you're doing Android, I'm assuming, unfortunately, App Stopped is Android, because iOS just disappears on iOS.
It just closes, yes.
just boop, gone. So on Android, when it says, unfortunately, app has stopped, go into your, open up Android Studio and look at Logcat. It's a panel on the bottom of the screen, and you'll have your log scrolling past. And if you open up your app, it'll show the crash of what caused the app to completely crash in that log, and that might give you a hint. And you can Google that crash, maybe the first line of the crash, and see what it means.
You can select your device or emulator, and you can filter by exception directly.
Type in a search, and
yes.
The key here though is if you're trying to solve this is a Flutter app and you're trying to solve this, I would recommend you delete your Android folder, right? Or at least back it up and move it out of your project.
Flutter
and then Flutter create space dot on the command line in your project folder. So Flutter space create and space and then a dot. And what that does is that will recreate the Android folder with the most recent stuff for Flutter, and then do a Flutter clean and run and build your app fresh. If you're still getting a problem, then that's probably related to some plugins you have as dependencies, in which case go that crash in ADB should tell you what plugin it is, the name of the plugin, or the type of thing it is, and that would help you diagnose which of your dependencies is causing a problem. Because by default, unfortunately, your app stopped shouldn't happen with Flutter from the get-go. It's very stable in that regard. So moving on. Thank you, by the way, for your good question. Okay, I'm gonna be honest with you. You don't know how to measure app size. So let me be clear. SDM, I think it's called SDM. SDM. I don't know if it's pronounceable. So the key is that the APK file that you get out of your, let's say we're just talking about Android, right? Same for iOS, is the binary file that you get out, the IPA on, it's an IPA, isn't it? Signed
yes,
IPA.
It's called IPA in iOS.
On iOS, and the APK file, which is the release binary for Android, is not what your user downloads. It's what you upload to the app stores. So your APK file contains 5 different versions of your app for different types of devices, right? Like x86, ARM32, ARM64, whatever else, right? Now, when you upload that, the app store separates it out into the little bits and will only send down what it needs to the device. Your app is 5 megabytes to the person downloading it, but it might be 20 megabytes for you to upload it, right? Yep. That's the difference. So if you are wanting to do that, you can do split APIs. When you do Flutter APK, Flutter build APK, do -- help, and it gives you the extra command line parameters. And there's a split APIs, I believe, is a parameter, and that will produce an APK file for each one, and that will tell you the size. But I can tell you right now, less than 5 megabytes, you won't get any app, even a native app, 5 megabytes now. So don't.
Here's the thing: if the less than 5 megabytes was the excuse time ago for the instant run, and there was 4 megabytes. Now it's 15 megabytes, so you don't have that issue. Yeah. And even if you really want to deliver something lightweight to the public, do a Flutter web app. Just a small feature on a Flutter web app. Put a link or a click or whatever. Just put the link. You had a PWA for that one, and at least you got something of what your app is all about. If you want the full deal, send it to the Play Store and download the full app.
They actually have that feature. So and they've had it for years, where you can put a little your browser with the banner to install the app fully, right? For the Play Store. So you can put a PWA app, install fully. You press a button, and it takes you to the Play Store to install it.
And part of the thing to think about here too is that your app, Flutter app, is controlling every pixel. So it has to download the entire framework of controlling every pixel. It can't reuse a lot of the stuff that's already in the ROMs, or however they do it these days, where you're reusing how to draw a vendor widget or a vendor thing.
I'm going to play devil's advocate on that point, right? Because apps don't even do that anymore. Apps and native Android apps don't rely on the native platform at all, because they can't, because each vendor might change things. That's always been the case now for like 10 years, 5 years at least. So the practice is that you ship with a support library. which ensures that you have a certain level of compatibility with the way the controls behave and work and styling. But what most people don't realize is you ship all the assets for the support library, all of the controls for the support library. Now you can use, ProGuard to cut down, but I'll be honest with you, adds about 5 to 8 megabytes at least to your app, right? Then you have your code on top. Most minimum apps now are around the 10 megabyte mark minimum for an Android app. Now you can get away with just using the native controls and not the support library, but then you're not making a professional app with lots of screens and features. You're making like a developer app. I want to press a button, import a CSV file, and process it. Right? I mean, a few buttons in the text field. You're not talking about like anything proper. Now, to be clear, the minimum addition to a Flutter app is 4.3. It might be slightly lower than now, 4.1, maybe megabytes. That is the Flutter engine. That's how big it is to add to your Android app. About that size for each platform, for each language that for each platform you're compiling for. And that means that the addition of adding your code normally is around a few megabytes, depending on your assets. I mean, if you put like a 5 megabyte PNG file, you're going to add 5 megabytes to every version of your app.
Use SVG.
Well, yes, no, but the point here is how to reduce my app size. Look at your assets. I mean, it's one of those things that people just don't realize. You go look at your assets and realize, oh my god, I've got something that
10 fonts.
I've got 10 fonts.
So many images.
It's another thing. I've got 10 versions of a font where if I put one variable font in there, right, where it includes all the variations in one font file, I just cut my 1.32 5 megabytes of font data down to 1 megabyte.
You can also defer font loading and get, like, if you're using Google Fonts, you can defer that to later.
It's true.
Yeah, it's another thing, right? There's nothing one thing to be clear about here is another way to reduce your app size. Now, this is right out there, and I would not recommend this for any beginner, but you can go download your assets. So a good example of this is, when you look at, you say user's profile, you might download their user profile image. You're not shipping that in your app, you're downloading it. There's no reason you can't download all sorts of data that your app might need from your server, right? I mean, that can reduce your app size so that you're only shipping what your app needs to run, right? And that's really down to, again, your app and your assets and everything else. But yeah, don't include huge video files. Download the video files, for example. Most people, like, let's say you got a video intro to your apps. You go into like onboarding, and then it shows you like a video here. Press play full screen. Load up a YouTube video. Put it on YouTube. Direct them to the YouTube app. Let them just play a video. If you must have it in app, put the MP file up on your server and then play the URL with video player plugin. Right? Don't ship the MP4 file of like 10 megabytes in your app, where people most probably don't even watch it. It takes up 10 megabytes of their phone space for no reason, right?
Yeah. The other thing is, if the size is complaining because maybe you have a low connections in your area, I would say that, okay, maybe that's understandable. But even if your app, it's just 1 megabyte, impossible. But let's just say you got 1 megabyte app. Most, if not every single app, they do cache for images. They do cache for a lot of stuff. And when you check, even if you check Instagram, Facebook, they're not 5, 10 megabytes. They're 1 gig or half a gig in your device because they cache everything.
I mean, there is something to mention, right? Like, we have Path Provider, and in Path Provider, you get what you should be. And again, people don't do this, and it frustrates the hell out of me. Well, I'm on a rant.
Passion.
So Path Provider has get cache directory. I think it's get temporary directory.
Yes, correct.
Temporary.
Yes.
And
it's a sandbox space that you have dedicated for your app.
Okay, but the idea is that you write any file there, the operating system might delete it.
Yep.
So when people do clear my disk space up in their like settings on their phone, it'll go through, delete all of the cache data, or maybe keep the most recent stuff that you access, but like just blitz all that data. But that is good. That's you working with the user. But you make a directory in your app's data directory and saying this is data, and putting all your temporary stuff in there. Like, let's say I download that MP video file, MP4 file. I've now put something in a place where the user can't delete it, and it's only ever used once, maybe. So the key is to design your app in such a way that when you download the MP4 file, you put in your temporary directory, and when you go to access it, if it's not there, download it again and show a spinner, right? Or whatever it is that whatever the way you want to do it is. But the point here is that gives the user control over their space of their device.
Yes.
Because
always use the sandbox. Always.
Some developers do this thing where their mindset is, I'm the only app running.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, right? I mean, you don't consider that the user has Facebook and all these other apps, and they're all eating up space, they're all eating up memory, they're all eating up resources of the device. And it's a mindset that you could get away with on desktop, right? On desktop, general purpose computer, you've got huge amounts of memory and space, and the operating systems are designed in such a way that lots of processes can run and everything else. A mobile phone is a completely different type of device and interface. You can't work them like you would do a desktop product.
Yeah,
so,
and don't make the user angry because they will delete your app and a competition will take your place, and that's 100% your fault, not the users.
Yeah. So being a good developer is not just about making a nice looking app. That's just small.
Thinking about the user.
Thinking about the user's perspective and giving them what they need, and also pushing back. I mean, a lot of people are in these companies. They might be in junior positions, right? If they can explain it, just explain your points. If you can succinctly explain your point and say, if we put it here, then the user can clean up their data and they'll get rid of it, and we can re-download it, and it will put an extra 3 hours on our project deadline. Most project managers go, if you could explain the reason for it, they'll be like, of course we should do that. That's a brilliant idea. Let's do that. And you've got a nice little point against you saying that you're a good employee. You've done what you know. Don't be that silent observer.
Yeah, there's a lot of clients and product that they have no idea about software, and they're just like, no, we want this, but everyone says okay, whatever, and they just try not to say no, but just say no. This is not okay, not possible, or the consequences of doing this. And if you explain it, you'll win in that situation because you have all the research to win that conversation.
The point is, as you have, if you can explain your points, right, then you've given over the information for them to make the product decision. And at the end of the day is, if you make sense, if what you've said makes sense, they're gonna. It makes sense to do it for them as well. Anyway.
I remember one situation that I have when they kind of question they told me, it's like, how would you fetch from the database 10,000 elements to show in a list? And my answer was, I'm not going to do it. I would never do that. I would do pagination. I will bring 20. Why the user needs 10,000 when the screen is so tiny they can only see 5 elements at a time? Just bring 20, do lazy loading, bring another 20, and so on. Never do those heavy things on front just because. Never do that.
I actually did this. You reminded me. Actually, I'm kind of like that shit. I worked on an app in the past, and there was a long scrolling content like that, right?
Yeah.
Like a news feed, let's say for Facebook, it wasn't that, but that kind of thing, right? And what's really interesting is there's you can actually do a very cool thing, and that is you can do this with Flutter as well.
Yep.
You increase your cache extent based on the velocity of the scroll.
That's true. You can do that.
So the faster the user scrolls, the more you cache, so you can be ahead, so the user never sees any loading stuff or anything else. Because most of the time, you can get that data quicker off the drive than the scroll can actually happen, assuming you get further enough ahead. So given enough tweaking with those numbers, you can get this thing where the user doesn't even know that any data is even loading. They don't get stopped, scrolled, or anything.
The other thing that I think barely people do is memoization. People barely do that. So if you want to bring 10,000 elements, but saving one, it's a little bit heavy. Just don't do it at the end. Do it at the beginning. When you save that element that's a little bit heavy, do that heavy mathematical thing or algorithm and store it. It will be lightweight to bring it back, but do that heavy thing, which is called memoization, in that moment.
I mean, essentially you're aggregating right at that point. You're kind of like you're pre-caching values that take a long time to load.
Yeah.
So you're not doing that each time the widget is added to the screen and laid out.
Correct. So if you do it once in that moment, when you bring in, it's just lightweight, soft, easy to consume.
In Dart collection, there is a few LRU caches that are really handy for this kind of stuff.
Yeah. There's LRU map, I think it is LRU map.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
That's, by the way, for people that don't know, LRU. That I'll put that in the, just to be clear. That's LRU. That is least recently used, I believe. Last recently used, least recently used, same difference. The idea is that as you access an item from the map, it moves it to the top of the list.
Right.
And the ones that are not accessed very frequently are pushed down to the very bottom. And once they get off the bottom of the limit, how many items, whatever you put as the limit on your map, they will get freed from memory.
Yeah. And we get it all for free in Dart Collection, which is nice.
And we only most recently one round, right? Yeah.
I used to have a T-shirt that said, "I've been most recently used."
Oh dear.
That's a dad joke. That's a dad joke. I had to get one at the end.
18 plus ticket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From Romuald Bob. I'm butchering everyone's names. I apologize. Hashtag Humpday Q&A. When and how should I use dispose, especially when I'm using state management systems with streams? Any you guys?
Use it correctly. That's the most important rule. First, use it correctly. Dispose needs to be used anytime you've created something in state, generally, that has a sort of a binding to the widget that it's being used by. But because there isn't a real easy way to notice that the widget has gone away, you are in charge using the dispose method of disposing of any of the things you have. And
essentially, that's it, right? I mean, when the widget goes away, the operator, the Flutter tells you this widget has been disposed now. You need to free up whatever you were using.
Yes.
Right. What's really nice, and this is one of the reasons I like RiverPod, is that RiverPod, you can attach almost any provider. And it was based on the original provider design by the same guy, Remy, who's done incredible work. RiverPod, for most of the providers, you can attach to the end of the name .autodispose. And that means you don't have to think about it at all. It actually hooks into the dispose cycle. It's amazing.
But even if you use the change notified provider, it does stuff for you. When you get into the docs, it says it will auto dispose for you.
Yeah, that's one of the ones that sort of has it already built in. But
the things you need to think about disposing is, will that whatever logic that you're doing is going to create memory leaks? If so, make sure to dispose. If it's not going to create memory leaks, then you can maybe give it a pass. Like if you did an animation, the animation is done. Maybe you can give it a pass. But everything that could create memory leaks, you should take care of that.
I'm just thinking about this. What literally his question is, when I'm using state management system with streams. So on streams, you have two things. Right? Let's say you have a background class that you've got from provider or RiverPod, whatever, and then you get a stream from that class. If that function you're calling to retrieve that stream creates a new stream each time you call that function, it's up to you to not just the fact that you subscribe to it, you need to unsubscribe from it and perhaps clean up any resources that you might have fetched from that stream or how you've managed that stream. Also, however, you might be able to get a broadcast stream from the backend, in which case, as long as you just unsubscribe, so you subscribe in your did change dependencies or in its state, and unsubscribe in your dispose. And I'm just going to throw this out there. A really simple solution to all of this: Future Builder and Stream Builder.
Yeah.
Do it for you. So they will unsubscribe and subscribe on your behalf. So use just use a Stream Builder, and then you can do whatever logic you want. There is Provider and RiverPod and a few other stream state management solutions out there have specific objects and things for dealing with streams in this subscription model. So there's actually a Stream Provider, I believe, which means that it will subscribe when you first access that Stream Provider. It will subscribe to the stream, and then you'll get your widget will get rebuilt and notified with the new data each time the data comes out. And when your widget goes away, it unsubscribes. It disposes of that stream as well when there's no more listens. So it's all pretty much for you. So
it's great that it hooks into the widget lifecycle, so you don't have to think about that. You don't have to keep adding dispose. You can also use those in stateless widgets, which is nice. It still somehow manages to hook into the dispose for the stateless widget, and you didn't have to create a non-available dispose method to override because there wouldn't be one in a stateless.
Yeah, I would say they even like nowadays with so many libraries that we have, you can get away to do so many stateless widgets, like so many stateless widgets with all these solutions Your app could be pretty much stateless widget, the whole
Yep.
thing.
I'm much happier.
For a
Right.
lot of stuff, like I won't say like the most common usage scenario that you show fetch something from Firebase and you have a list of items.
I
You
think
can use consumer from a provider and that's it.
I think what most people forget when building it, well, I think most developers don't know or they need to understand is scope your data. And what I mean by that is, let's say a user profile, right? You log into your app and I want to access that user profile from across all of my screens. So I've got an option here. I can store that in my top level widget. So all my sub widgets can use provider to access that. Or I can take it out of the widget tree entirely and put it into a backend class and have that data accessible. But this goes for the same for anything else. So let's say we had a e-commerce app and we have a list of categories and each category has a list of products. And then you can tap in the product details, normal stuff. In that situation, my list of categories, well, if I might fetch them from the backend system, right? And they're cached in on my storage of my device. And when I go to that screen, I load them up from the backend, but then I store those in my state of my widget, and my stateful widget. And what that means is now I have them cached ready for the UI, so I don't have to refetch them from disk or from a future or from anything like that. Now, this is the difference between you can have state in your you can have variables and state in your widgets, but the question is what is the scope of that data? Where should it sit? Because right there, I'm using it for that screen, and that's why it should be there. Now, if I wanted that to live change, then I might want to have a stream of that, but I'm still going to have a cached copy of that data. So if the build function of my widget gets called again and again and again, I'm not refetching that data all the time, right? And this kind of harks back to Randall, you did a video on future build and stream build. I'm using them correctly. And it's kind of that similar approach of you want to make sure that there's a good example. Another example, let's say you have a slider that you drag, right? The value of that slider, that's a stateless widget, right? First of all, slider is a stateless widget. You give it the value and you have it on changed. Now you can wrap that in a stateful widget and store the value of the slider. So when it gets changed, you store it and you rebuild your widget. Now what you've just done is you've made slider a stateful widget by wrapping it in another one. You've made it stateful, and that further means that you can now have that cause another event that tells something that the slider went to a value. But key point here is the UI is still being rebuilt from the local stateful value, right? The one that's in the stateful widget, meaning that every rebuild has still got that same value. I don't know. There's so many ways to talk about this, and it's hard to talk about it without seeing code.
Yeah.
So maybe
and also is related to that seeing code is just check your logs, and if you see something strange that it shouldn't be happening when you leave it a screen, it says like, okay, maybe I should be disposing information because the log keeps sending me alerts.
There's something that most people don't do. They don't use logging. Like there's a Dart logger class, the package. Use the logger and log everything. And you log it at different levels. So when you want verbose information, like a view came into the screen or a view built, put a verbose print statement. And when it's debugged, do a debug one. And what this means is when you run your app and you want to get all the information, you put in verbose mode, and it means you get to see everything that's going on. But in normal running, you have it set to none so that when you release your app, no one sees any login information. Anyway, oh crap. I forgot literally my point I was going to say before I said that. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it happens.
I think we've run out of questions.
I believe so.
Yeah, no, I think we've run out.
If not, we've run out of time too.
Yeah, I think we're way over on schedule. Oh, that's what I was going to say.
Sure,
Next week, we'll see if we can get some live coding in, and we'll see if we can explain some of these things with some live examples. That might be fun.
Yep.
And back at 9 a.m. Pacific, not 10 a.m. like it is today.
Time zone changes. Yes.
Use Los Angeles, America, Los Angeles as your basis for the 9 a.m., not something in the UK.
Yeah. So 4 p.m. UTC.
Yep. Awesome. Thanks for bringing me on again. And I don't think I've ever actually said, because you never let me introduce myself.
Oh, sorry. Please.
I'm now extroducing myself, I guess, right? That's the opposite of introducing, right? Just wanted to say that I'm a Flutter GDE, been at for about 3 years, and I make my videos. Simon mentioned my channel. It's just search for Randall Schwartz, Dart and Flutter, or look at the community channel, the YouTube channel. Yeah, I'm linked from there too. So, and his particular video that he's referring to is I show in about 10 minutes how people make mistakes make common mistakes. I see it a lot in the questions I answered of create the bottom line, TLDR is don't create your stream or your feature in the call to feature builder or stream builder. It should be somewhere else as a variable referenced. That's really the bottom line of the video, but go watch the video. It actually illustrates exactly what happens. So thanks. And thanks, Simon, for inviting me again.
Welcome. Yeah, I mean, we'll be back 1 hour earlier next week. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for your questions.
Yes.
If you have anything over this current week, note it down somewhere, because we'll be here next week answering your questions, and we'll be answering way more general Flutter questions. So keep them coming. Keep them coming. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Goodbye. Goodbye.